I was feeling hurt and upset. Sheila McGraw and I had been together since sophomore year. We were in love, and the previous November I had asked her to marry me. She had been thrilled and jumped into my arms, while everyone around us smiled and clapped. It seemed perfect. Sheila was the girl I had always dreamed of, and we were supposed to be together forever. But on the first Saturday in February, I borrowed her roommate's key to sneak into her dorm room and leave a present for her. It was a small box labeled "Do Not Open Until Valentine's Day." I wanted her to enjoy the excitement of waiting to see what was inside. But the surprise was on me. When I opened the door, I found Sheila in an unexpected situation with Brian Haverson, her lab partner from chemistry class. She had told me she would be out shopping, so I was caught off guard. Sheila looked shocked and frightened as I stood there. After a moment, she gasped, and Brian quickly pulled away in surprise. "Sorry," I said. "Didn't mean to interrupt your plans." I held up the little box. "This was meant to be an early Valentine's gift for you, but I think I'll keep it." I turned and walked away, ignoring Sheila's calls after me. That was about 2 weeks ago. I had been going back and forth between crying by myself and feeling so angry that I could lash out. Sheila had tried to reach out, leaving many sorrowful messages, but I didn't want to hear any of it. There was nothing she could say that would make things right. It was clear to me that she hadn't been forced into anything. I had no interest in marrying someone who could betray me so soon after our engagement. Now, here I was at a frat party, wondering why I was even there. I wasn't really into frat life, and after a few parties in my freshman year, hoping to meet someone special, I hadn't returned since I started dating Sheila. That night, I found myself hoping for a similar chance, though I wasn't very hopeful. I stood by the keg, chatting with a couple of football players I knew unlike some others. They were decent students and good guys while enjoying a beer or two. I was thinking about leaving, not seeing much chance of meeting anyone, when I heard laughter from another room. I peered in to see a group of guys gathered, pointing and laughing at a girl in a bright green dress. She was really pretty, at least from behind. Her dress showed off her legs and her nice figure, and her straight brown hair shone as she moved. From this angle, she looked stunning. As I walked toward the room, I heard one of the guys say something mean. "If only she had a bag on her head, we'd all be interested." The others laughed loudly while the girl turned away, covering her face. She seemed to be upset. I couldn't see everything happening, but it was clear they were making fun of her for some reason. I decided to step in, feeling brave enough from the drinks I had. There were 6 of them, and I knew it might not be smart. "What's wrong with you guys?" I shouted, but they just glanced at me without caring. I reached over gently to take the girl's arm. "Come with me," I said softly. "Let's find a bathroom so you can clean your face." Then I got the biggest surprise of my life. She lowered her hands slowly, and I finally saw her face. It was startling, really startling. Her face had noticeable scars, one major scar going from her forehead down across her right eye and cheek. The eye appeared smaller and looked different from the other. Her nose was oddly shaped, and it made her nostrils stand out too much. At first I realized she must have gone through something terrible. My reaction was immediate. I stepped back, shocked. She looked sad and hurt, and I could tell she was used to people reacting this way when they first saw her. Then she leaned closer, studying me, and I was surprised when she said, "Tommy? Tommy Lawrence?" I stared at her. Clearly she knew me, but I had no idea who she was not after seeing her like this. "It's Arena Adams from Greenfield." She looked at me with hope, but also a bit nervous, as if she feared I might be mean or run off. She understood how her appearance affected people. "Arena?" I squinted, trying to see if it could really be her. I hadn't seen Arena since we were 14, and it was hard to recognize my childhood friend behind that changed face. Then she hugged me tightly, crying and saying, "It is you," as she leaned on my shoulder. I held her while she cried, and once she calmed down a bit, we went to the kitchen. I got her some wet paper towels to clean her face. After that, I grabbed us some beers, and we went outside to sit together on the porch of the frat house. I could see that she had intentionally taken me to a dark corner where I couldn't see her very clearly. Irina and I grew up as neighbors and best friends in Greenfield, Indiana. We did everything together, riding bikes, playing in the stream behind her house, camping in my backyard during summer, and debating which TV shows were the best. As we got older, we completed school projects together, chatted about classmates in junior high, and dreamed about our futures. We didn't even need to say it. We knew we would always be best friends. But then, after 8th grade, everything changed when her dad got a job in Arizona, and her family moved away. We wrote a couple of letters, but soon lost touch. I occasionally asked my parents if they had heard from Mr. and Mrs. Adams, but there was never any news. Now, sitting together on a small sofa on that dim porch, we talked for hours, catching up on the last 8 years of our lives. My story was brief. I finished high school in Greenfield, dated a few girls, went to Denison, majored in electrical engineering, and fell in love with Sheila, only to find out she had been unfaithful. In 4 months, I would graduate and move to Madison, Wisconsin, where I had a job lined up at a software design company. Irina's story was much longer and sadder. She liked Tucson well enough, but she felt lonely at first. When she was 15, she and her parents were in a serious car accident while heading to Las Vegas for a short visit. Irina's younger brother Sam and both of her parents lost their lives, and Irina was seriously hurt. She spent weeks in the hospital while doctors worked hard to help her recover. Eventually, when she was healthy enough to be moved, though her face had changed, she went to live with her aunt and uncle near Sacramento. She went through a long rehabilitation process, both in the hospital and at their home, before she could return to school. The doctors were wonderful. They were patient and kind. They fixed everything except this, she said, pointing to her face. Did they think about any surgeries to help? I asked, feeling a bit awkward but curious. She laughed. This is after surgery, Tommy. This was the best they could do. I'm Irina the monster, the girl who frightens both kids and adults. She shook her head, still smiling. But at least I'm alive. I have a life well, something like a life. I missed a couple of years of school, so I'm only a sophomore now. I wanted to study nursing, but she laughed again. Let's just say they suggested I pursue a different path. They don't want me to scare the patients. I squeezed her hand, feeling at a loss for words. I couldn't imagine the challenges Irina had faced or what her life was like now. I went to get us 2 more beers and we continued our conversation late into the night. What was happening back there? I asked, nodding toward the party. I went in because I heard some people making fun of a girl. Nothing I'm not used to, she replied. A guy in one of my classes asked me to come to the party with him. We've known each other for a couple of semesters, so he's gotten used to me. I was foolish enough to think he might actually like me. When we arrived, it was clear he brought me just for laughs, someone to impress his friends with, like a funny story or something. Maybe he thought I would drink a lot and make things easy for him later. I mean, I'm not bad looking if you look beyond my face. Poor Irina. You really do have a lovely figure, Irina. You look great in that dress. Thanks, Tom. She touched my cheek gently. You've always been such a nice person, even when we were kids. I got us more beer as I wondered why I hadn't seen Irina in the last 2 years at Denison. As we talked, I saw how she kept to herself and rarely went out. Who could blame her based on how people treat her? She mentioned doing her grocery shopping late at night and wearing a cap low to hide her scars. I remembered some whispers around campus about an unattractive girl, but I'd never thought much about it. How could I have known they were talking about Irina? Finally, around 3 a.m., Irina said she was tired, and I offered to walk her back to her apartment. I don't live in the dorms. They couldn't find anyone to share with me, she said. I stood up, feeling the buzz from the beer, and when I helped Irina up, she swayed a little, too. We leaned on each other and walked away. Will you come in for a minute, Tom? Let me show you my place, Irina asked when we arrived. I was tired and a bit tipsy, but agreed, and she showed me her tidy apartment with a nice kitchen, a little living room turned into a study, and a cozy bedroom in the back. She went to change, and soon I fell asleep on her couch. A little later, I woke up in complete darkness. Irina was holding my hand, gently saying, Tom, come with me. She guided me by the hand, and suddenly we were at her bedroom. She softly pushed me down on the bed and took off my shoes. Irina, what? I started, confused. She had turned off all the lights and I could barely see her. Shh, she said, and moved a little away from me. I could hear the gentle swish of her robe as she moved closer. She settled beside me, leaning into my side, looking for comfort. "Irina?" I murmured, surprised. She placed a finger over my lips. "Please, Tom," she whispered. "I want to feel close to someone." I hesitated, unsure, but her hand gently guided mine, and I could feel the warmth in her touch. "Are you certain, Irina?" I asked, wanting to be sure this was what she truly wanted. She nodded, reassuring me, explaining softly, "I trust you, Tom. You've always been here for me." Despite my initial hesitation, I felt a strong desire to offer her comfort and companionship. We embraced, moving closer in the quiet darkness, letting our connection deepen. The world around us faded away, leaving only the gentle sounds of our breathing. We shared a gentle kiss, letting it calm our nerves and soothe any doubts. The closeness was comforting, bringing a warmth that words couldn't quite describe. As we lay together, lost in the moment, our bond grew stronger. The feeling of being close, of being accepted, was all we needed. After a while, we lay still, both of us relaxed and at peace. The quiet enveloped us as we held each other, both reassured by the simple, quiet comfort we had shared. Finally, I wrapped my arms around her, feeling her settle comfortably beside me as we drifted into a peaceful rest, content and grounded in the closeness we had found. She pulled the blankets up over both of us, and soon we were both asleep. I think I heard her softly say, "Thank you, Tom," in my ear. When I woke up, the sun was shining brightly through the window, warming part of the bed. The clock read 11:38, and I was alone. I put on my pants and walked into the kitchen, hoping to find Irina. I was thinking about taking some aspirin and having black coffee. There was a note on the table. "Dear Tom, I went to the library. I didn't want us to have an awkward moment today where you felt bad for what happened, and I had to tell you it was fine. It was nice, really, and I enjoyed it. Thank you for being so kind. But I want you to know that there are no expectations. Just a friend being good to another friend. If you want to get together, let me know. If not, that's okay too. He'll understand. Best, Irina." I went back to my dorm room for the aspirin and grabbed some coffee from the cafeteria on the way. It felt strange to stay alone at Irina's place, and I honestly had no idea how to feel about what had happened. Mostly, I felt sad for Irina, who seemed to be in a world where people were scared of her and ignored her. She was a normal, bright, and kind person, but her appearance made her feel lonely. A couple of days later, I called her, and we talked for about half an hour. It was a little awkward, and I wanted to make sure she felt okay about what happened. She reassured me that she was fine. If she had hinted at wanting to be close again, I would have been open to it. I really enjoyed our time together, but she never brought it up. We said we would talk again soon, maybe go to a movie, then hung up. Weeks passed without me calling her again. It wasn't exactly guilt. It was more like confusion. She was someone I knew well but didn't know at all. I wasn't sure how to be her friend or if she wanted that. In the end, I think I was a bit afraid. I didn't want to think about how it would feel to be with her in public and face the looks and comments she received. Plus, it was my last semester, and I had a lot to do before graduation. At least, that's what I told myself. On May 11th, about 10 days before graduation, I got home to find a message from Irina inviting me to come over that evening. I felt guilty for not having taken her to the movies, so I went over soon after dinner. She welcomed me with a serious expression, and I tried hard not to react to her appearance. I wondered what it must be like to see that face in the mirror every morning and know it was yours. "Hi, Tom, thanks for coming. Would you like some peach pie?" It just came out of the oven. Baking is a hobby of mine. I was going to say no, but the pie smelled so good that I couldn't resist. I said yes, and she brought us 2 pieces along with glasses of milk. The pie was amazing, and I told her so. She thanked me with a small smile, but then became serious. "Tom, I'm really sorry, but I need to tell you something important. I owe you an apology. I'm pregnant." I looked at her, surprised, probably reacting like many others might in this situation. Are you saying it's mine?" She nodded, looking regretful. "You're the only one I've ever been with. I'm truly sorry." "But we talked about protection, and you said—" "I know. We were both drunk and I didn't have any. Honestly, I didn't think about it. I just wanted to go forward, and I thought it was a safe time of the month. I was wrong." I know it wasn't fair to you, she added. We sat quietly for a moment. She seemed a little scared, but I didn't feel anger. I wasn't sure why, but I felt calm and sympathetic. I reached for her hand. What do you want to do? If you're thinking about ending the pregnancy, it'll help you with that. She shook her head. I just can't. I believe in a woman's choice, but I can't go through with it. I can feel this life inside me, and I can't end it. What about adoption? She tried to smile, but I saw tears in her eyes. I've thought about that, but I just can't give my baby away. This might be the only child I ever have, and the idea of giving it up is too hard for me. Okay. We sat in silence, both deep in thought. I kept hearing my father's voice in my mind. He had passed away nearly 3 years ago, and I missed him a lot. A true man shows his character in tough times, he used to say. Irina, I said, we need to consider getting married. What? She said in surprise. I could never do that to you, Tom. I can't tie you down with me and a baby. You're just starting your life. You are too, Irina. And raising a baby alone isn't something you should do right now. You're still in school and don't have much money. We talked, and at times argued for hours. By midnight, we were both tired. I said I would come back the next day for lunch, and we could discuss it more. Irina couldn't believe I was serious. She didn't think I would want to marry her just because of the pregnancy. But I thought about my dad and the values he taught me, and I felt it was the right thing to do. It took 3 days, but I managed to convince her. We set a date for a quick wedding the day after graduation so my mom could be there. I called her to explain everything. She was shocked and worried about my future and the costs involved. But she remembered Irina. She knew Irina was a kind person from a good family. Hearing about their sad situation really touched her. Luckily, I had a good job waiting for me, which meant I could support my new family. Irina and I decided she would transfer to the University of Wisconsin and move with me to the apartment I had rented in Madison at the beginning of June. I quietly shared with my mom and my friend Adam, who was my best man, about how Irina looked. They weren't fully prepared, but they tried to cover their reactions. My mom, being as sweet as she is, hugged and kissed Irina and told her how happy she was that we would be together. I felt proud of her for that. Irina's aunt and uncle couldn't fly in for the wedding, but they sent us a lovely note and a check that would help with our moving expenses. We decided to skip a honeymoon and save our money for the future. Instead, we had a simple dinner at a restaurant with Adam and my mom to celebrate our marriage. Afterward, Irina and I returned to the apartment, shared a little champagne, just half a glass for the mom Toby, and then went to bed. It wasn't just for sleep, though. Even with such a quick wedding, we wanted to have a special first night. Irina preferred it to be completely dark, and even though I had gotten used to seeing her face, I understood that she felt more relaxed that way. At first, things were a bit awkward. It was different from our first time when we had both been quite tipsy. Back then, it was just a one-time thing for her. But now, it was the start of our marriage. Even though I believed I had made the right choice for our child, I couldn't help but have some doubts about what lay ahead. But soon it became clear that Irina really enjoyed being close. She had such a lovely body, and she appreciated every touch. Just thinking about the years we would have together was exciting. As the evening went on and things heated up, she sat up and shared a moment that took my breath away. I was filled with joy and anticipation. We shared soft kisses, and I felt as if this was the start of something beautiful together. That night marked the beginning of our married life, and it was truly special. It didn't last for long, but it was intense and very satisfying. Knowing that Irina enjoyed it too made it even better. She sighed softly beneath me, and I could sense her excitement. Afterward, we lay together, catching our breath. I said, "Thanks, Mrs. Lawrence, that was wonderful." She laughed lightly. "You're welcome, Mr. Lawrence." Then a moment later she started to cry, and I held her close. "What's wrong, Irina?" I asked gently. She glanced up at me from the dim light, tears on her cheeks. "This isn't what you wanted, Tom, a life with me. With this face." And then she continued, "You don't love me. You should be with someone you truly care about." I interrupted her, saying, "Sometimes life surprises us. We grew up together. You were my best friend, Irina. I've never had anyone as close as you. This was meant to be, us being together again. It might not be the usual romantic story, but here we are. You are lovely and strong, and I want to be the kind of husband you deserve. I leaned down to kiss her, smiling as she cried a bit more. After that, we shared a sweet moment together, and then we fell asleep. Irina was right about a few things at first. We didn't marry because she was the girl of my dreams, or because I adored her completely. We married because she was expecting my child, and yes, her appearance did play a role in my feelings, but a couple of things changed over time. First, I got used to how Irina looked much faster than I expected. This wasn't because I tried hard. I simply became familiar with it, and her scarred face with the uneven features no longer bothered me. I remembered a high school friend who lost his voice after throat surgery. At first, his soft voice was strange, but then it felt normal, and we stopped noticing it. So while I knew Irina's looks might scare others, it became normal for me. I could talk to her and look at her without feeling uncomfortable. The other thing that happened more gradually was that I fell in love with her. Irina had been a big part of my childhood, my best friend, the person I shared everything with. Over the years, we had built a strong bond, even if it ended abruptly when she moved away at 14. Now, as I watched her navigate a world that often misunderstood her, I admired her bravery and determination. Her consistent kindness and optimism warmed my heart, and I started to realize how deeply I cared for her. I could see that she was the one meant for me, and I wanted to share my life with her. At that time, I didn't recognize these feelings clearly because I believed we were just meant to be together. We were expecting a baby and planned to raise it together, possibly even have more children, though we never discussed it. Throughout that summer, as we packed and settled into Madison, I began my new job and Irina started her classes. We lived as a couple, growing closer and building trust in each other. Our intimacy evolved too, though it wasn't a straight path. Irina was always willing to be close, which was pretty much every night at first. Still, sometimes it felt like she was doing it out of obligation or because that's what partners do. I don't mean to say she was disinterested, not at all. She seemed to enjoy our time together, and on some nights she was lively, breathing heavily and showing her excitement. Those were certainly the best moments. However, after a month or so, Irina began to take charge sometimes. She would come home with a magazine and giggle while asking if we could try some of the new ideas she read about, like different ways to connect or sharing long massages. I love this, especially because having a partner who wants to be close is incredibly uplifting. Part of our strong connection came from the years we spent as best friends. One Saturday morning, I brought 2 cups of coffee to bed and we shared some playful time together, kissing and enjoying our closeness. Then, I gently turned her onto her hands and knees while I stood behind her at the edge of the bed. We both liked this position. I think it made Irina feel more comfortable. By August, she was 6 months pregnant, and this way allowed her belly to rest easily. Normally, she would stay still while I moved, but this time I took it slow, encouraging her to guide our movements. I started to playfully pull away from her, moving back from the bed slowly. It made her lean towards me more, and I could see she enjoyed it, so I continued. Her breathing got faster, and she said, "Tommy, stop teasing me." But I kept it going, coming close but then stepping back, making her reach for me. Her body began to tremble, and soft sounds came from her as she tried to connect with me. In that moment, I didn't hold back and moved in closer, and she gasped as she felt it. I continued to enjoy the moment, feeling a rush as we both reacted to the experience. We lay next to each other, breathing deeply and smiling. She kissed me gently, looking at me with warmth, saying, "You tease, you're a bad boy." Then she playfully traced her way down my body, showing her affection in a sweet way for the first time. I relaxed as she continued, occasionally encouraging her softly. I thought she might want us to be close again, so I began to pull back. But she smiled and said, "No, baby, I want to keep doing this." And she returned to her gentle attention. After a wonderfully enjoyable time, she finished and snuggled up next to me, both of us feeling cozy as we drifted off for a short nap. I felt completely content. Part of my happiness came from her calling me baby for the first time. We were always kind to each other, but this new closeness felt special, like a milestone in our relationship. My job in Madison started just 2 weeks after we moved, which made my summer busier than Irina's. Her main tasks at first were to focus on her health and settle in our apartment. She was happy to organize things at home, but shopping for furniture and decorations made her uneasy. I understood why. When I accompanied her to stores back at Denison, I noticed the surprised looks and sudden quietness from others around us, both customers and staff. My heart went out to her, knowing she faced that reaction regularly. So, I made sure to go shopping with her as much as I could in Madison. We always visited furniture stores together, and grocery shopping was done either by me or alongside her. Having me there by her side seemed to give her strength, making it easier to deal with the glances and whispered comments. I wondered if she felt, so what if I don't look perfect? As you can see, I have a partner. And then I remembered that she was with me because I had gotten her pregnant. Another thing I tried to do was help her by preparing people before they met her. The day before Irina's appointment with her new doctor in Madison, I went to the office and talked briefly to the nurses. I brought a picture of Irina and told them that my wife, their new patient, had been hurt in an accident. Showing them the picture, which surprised and saddened them, I said I wanted them to be ready to welcome her with kindness. Nancy, the main nurse, understood what I meant and borrowed the photo for a moment to show to the doctor so he could be prepared for Irina the next day. When Irina and I arrived for her appointment, my visit had clearly made a difference. The staff was kind and friendly to her, and they were much better able to look at her without showing discomfort. I had the same success in early July when I went to a call center where Irina had applied for a job. We decided that with the baby coming in October, there was no point in her starting school that fall, so she would look for a job to earn some money before the baby was born. A call center was a good choice. She could work there without being seen by customers. I spoke to the supervisor who would be interviewing Irina, showed her the photo, and explained the situation. The next evening, Irina came back to the apartment happy and excited. She had gotten the job. Even better, her job was not far from where I worked, so I could take her each day on my way to the office. That way, we could manage with our single car, an old Toyota, and she didn't have to use the public bus to get to work. My job was going well, and I believed my supervisors thought highly of me. So like anyone who is unaware of an upcoming tragedy, I went through life happy, not realizing what was about to happen. I remember one evening when I felt everything was perfect in my life. It was the Thursday after Labor Day. I had gone out after dinner to get a half-gallon of mint chocolate chip ice cream for Irina because she was craving it. When I came back into the apartment, I found Irina on the floor, having a seizure, twitching and with her eyes rolled back. There was a puddle beside her. I panicked and called 911 for help, then held her in my arms, trying to keep her head from hitting the floor. Within 10 minutes, we were in an ambulance heading to the hospital. Irina was no longer shaking and appeared unresponsive, and I was filled with fear. I won't stretch out the story. We lost the baby, and I almost lost Irina. It was a very serious case of eclampsia, which happens with high blood pressure during pregnancy. Normally, there are signs that something is wrong, but this time, there weren't any. Irina's seizure was so severe that we thought she might not survive right in the emergency room. Usually, the doctors would stabilize the mother and then deliver the baby quickly by cesarean section. But in this case, it took so long to help Irina that the baby didn't make it. It was a little boy who was already gone by the time they delivered him. The doctors, nurses, and grief counselor at the hospital were very kind. They encouraged us to give our little boy a name, Walter Ivan Lawrence, after my father and Irina's grandfather, and to have a small funeral for him. We were able to donate some of his organs to sick newborns in need, which brought us a little comfort. Our friends and co-workers were supportive and patient, too. None of that changed how terrible it was. I felt shocked and sad. Irina was even more devastated. Early on, when she first told me about the pregnancy, she had said she believed this would be her only child. What she really meant, though, was that no one else would marry her or have another child with her. Unfortunately, she was right for a different reason. The frantic attempt to save our baby meant she could not have any more children. For weeks, we struggled to get through each day. Irina's aunt came to help for a couple of weeks, cooking for her and giving her a shoulder to cry on. After 10 days, I went back to work, but I felt like a ghost. Everyone said we needed time to heal, that it would help us move forward, and they were right. But it felt like it took forever. Irina needed about 4 weeks to recover at home after 5 days in the hospital before she felt ready to return to work. This became a turning point. After that, we had a routine and a way to get through each day without thinking too much about our loss. Remarkably, we took care of each other. The grief counselor gently warned me that such a loss could sometimes drive couples apart, and she shared signs to watch for, like if one of us became withdrawn. But Irina and I worked through it together. We kept talking, and somehow we remained aware of each other's feelings. She was very thoughtful toward me, always checking on how I was doing, and I tried to do the same for her. Everything made us cry for a time. The first time we went to the movies after losing Walter, something in the story touched us both, and we quietly wept together in the theater, holding hands. Receiving a wedding invitation from my cousin brought tears to both of us. We couldn't help but think about his dream of having a family. It was almost 2 months before we were close again. For a while, neither of us felt like being intimate. Even when we tried, we didn't quite get there. As we held each other in bed, Irina suddenly burst into tears. Before long, I was crying too. We laughed and smiled through our tears, realizing how strange everything felt. But 2 nights later, things turned around. We shared a gentle, sweet moment together, and slowly, everything began to feel normal again. In November, Irina suggested a getaway. We planned to spend Thanksgiving with my mom in Greenfield, and then enjoy a long weekend at an affordable resort by Lake Michigan before heading back to work. It was a lovely and romantic trip. We strolled along the shore, allowing the cold wind to brush against us, and then went inside, where we enjoyed each other's company often over the 3 days. Still, I sensed something was bothering Irina. She was loving, but seemed distracted. Finally, on Sunday morning, she was ready to talk. After a cozy morning together and brunch, we returned to our room. To my surprise, Irina wanted to be close again. She took her time, showing her love, then pulled me closer. We were together in a way that felt unfamiliar to me, but it was sweet. I noticed her eyes were focused on me, as if she wanted to remember every detail of my expression. Later, as we lay together, I remembered we had to pack and head back to Madison. Irina sat up and quietly said, "Tom, we need to talk." I could tell this was serious, so I nodded for her to continue. Her face was serious, but not angry or scared. "When you asked me to marry you," she said, "it was to give our child a family, both a father and a mother. We knew it wasn't because of love, or that we were life partners. You have been such a great husband, so kind and supportive during the pregnancy. But we lost our baby and we won't have another, so it hit me hard. I finally understood where this was going and I felt shocked. Had I been completely unaware? Wait, Irina, I started, but she stopped me with a sad smile. The reason you married me is gone, Tom. I want you to be free to seek the life you truly want with someone you love when you find her. It's time for us to talk about a divorce." There was a long pause. I knew what I wanted to say, but I wasn't sure how to express it. I carefully asked, "Is a divorce what you want, Irina, or is it something you feel you need to say?" She looked away. "It's hard for me to know what I really want, Tom. I've had years to accept the idea that no one would ever love me or want to marry me. I guess I still have that hope, but I know it's unlikely. You've been my husband and my friend, and I'm really glad we found each other again. But I know your happiness doesn't involve being with someone like me." She pointed to her face. "Irina," I said slowly, making sure she looked at me. "I never imagined we would be in this situation. Yes, I married you because you were having my child, not because I loved you at first. But since you've been my best friend, it was an easy choice. I already knew what a wonderful person you are, how great a friend you've always been, and what an amazing mother you would be. And you've left out some important things. First, scars or no scars, you are one of the most beautiful women I have ever known." She gave me a small, hesitant smile, and I continued. "And second," I paused for a moment, "I truly love you." She smiled again, though it seemed doubtful. "You are a kind man, Tommy. I know you care about me. We've been through so much together. I know you have feelings too, and so do I. But you don't love me the way a man should love the woman he wants to spend his life with." I leaned back against the pillows, feeling stuck. Here we were, facing the heart of the problem. I knew I loved Irina. I wanted to spend my life with her, but she didn't believe me, and I wondered if I could ever change her mind. We talked for another hour, but neither of us changed our thoughts. She wanted to stay in Madison. She liked her job and had grown accustomed to the city. There were no family members in Greenfield anymore, and she didn't want to go to Sacramento to be with her aunt and uncle. But she wanted a divorce, and she hoped I would be able to move on and find someone else. I couldn't make her understand that I loved her, no matter what she thought about her appearance, and that I wanted to wake up next to her every morning. We drove back to Madison, returned to work, and tried to move on with our lives. Almost every day, Irina talked about getting a divorce. She was always calm, never angry, and each time, I tried to show her that I wanted to stay together. She printed information from a website that explained how simple it was to get an uncontested divorce in Wisconsin, as long as there were no children involved. In just a few months and a few $100s, you could start your new life, she said. Maybe you won't rush into marriage again, she suggested. You could enjoy being a single guy with a good job. Perhaps you'll have fun meeting new people. I laughed and responded, but how is that going to matter if I can't be with the one person I truly care about? With a smile, she said, you'll still have me around for a little while. That should be enough. No matter what I said, nothing seemed to change her mind. A few days later, I decided to try another approach. I interrupted her talk about divorce and asked, Irina, do you love me? She paused, surprised. It doesn't matter, she replied. Of course it matters. It's really the most important thing, especially since I love you. I want to know if you love me, if you'd be happy to stay with me, or if you want to be single again to find someone else. Tommy, she said, I'm not going to do that, unless there are dances for people who look very silly. You still haven't answered. Do you love me? There was a long silence as she looked out the window. Finally, she said, Yes, Tom, I do. But that doesn't change anything. Weeks passed and I struggled to break this deadlock. How do you convince the person you love that you truly care? I did everything I could think of. I was warm, kind, and supportive. I surprised her with flowers, and I showed her love in many ways. Irina remained a caring partner and a good friend, but she still didn't believe me. At the end of January 2001, I made a reservation at the finest French restaurant in Madison, ensuring we had a private table. I even arranged for a salary advance from my supervisor and took it right to a jewelry store. Taking a deep breath, I spent a large amount on a beautiful engagement ring, much bigger than the small one I had given Irina the summer before. That evening, we dressed up and went out for dinner. We enjoyed some champagne, good wine, and delicious food, having a wonderful time. As we sipped coffee, I leaned across the table and took her hands in mine. Irina, I said, you did your research and saw how quickly we could get a divorce if we wanted to. Well, I did some research too. It turns out that a contested divorce takes a lot longer. I looked at her and said, You know, I can keep holding on to this for as long as it takes years, even unless you're willing to spend a fortune to change things. And let's be honest, neither of us wants that. I gave her a playful smile. So why don't we just let go of this whole idea? We can save ourselves time and money. Then I moved around the table, kneeling down right in front of her. Her eyes widened with surprise, and I pulled out a small box, opening it to reveal a beautiful ring. Irina, would you do me the honor of staying my wife? A long silence followed as she stared at the ring, then at my face, which I kept relaxed and hopeful. I felt calm. I knew that no matter her answer, I wasn't about to give up. After a while, I saw something shift in her gaze. She began to tear up, and with a shaky voice, she whispered, "Oh, Tommy," before wrapping her arms around me tightly. As I held her, she cried softly on my shoulder and then whispered, "Yes, yes, he'll stay with you, Tommy." When she'd dried her eyes, we had a sweet moment of slipping off her old engagement ring and replacing it with the new one. We admired it together, even showing it to the waiter when he returned with the bill. During the car ride home, we didn't say a word. Irina held my hand tightly the entire way. When we finally got back to our apartment, she pulled me in close, kissed me with intensity, and said with a smile, "Go freshen up and then meet me in bed." That night was filled with an energy that surprised us both. The warmth and excitement between us seemed to flow freely, and we simply enjoyed each other's company, laughing and holding each other close. It was a night of shared joy and love, a memory to cherish. We drifted off to sleep afterward, both happy and comforted, grateful for the bond we'd strengthened. The third time we were together, I was so tired that I just lay back and let her enjoy the moment. I couldn't help but watch her beautiful smile as we connected. The next morning, I woke up to soft kisses on my ear, and we spent a good hour in each other's arms before I finally asked for breakfast. That Friday night felt like a real celebration for us when we fully shared our hearts and made a commitment to each other. It marked the beginning of our true marriage. It might sound like a cliché, but things did change after that night. Our bond deepened, and what was already good between us became even better. Irina grew more comfortable with the reality that my feelings for her were genuine. I truly loved her and enjoyed having her by my side. Our friendship, always strong, grew even stronger. The romantic side of our relationship blossomed. We treated each other like partners, both in everyday life and in our quiet moments together. We started doing all the sweet things couples do when they fall in love, taking long walks, talking deeply about our hopes and dreams, and just enjoying each other's presence again, almost a year after our wedding. Our trust in one another deepened, and I felt incredibly lucky. Irina's understanding that I admired her made her more confident. She began to embrace her beauty and show it off, teasing me in playful ways and enjoying our closeness together. I felt like the luckiest person alive, and things seemed to get better and better. But then, everything shifted. Irina sat crying, her face in her hands. I watched her, feeling too stunned for anger or sadness at that moment. As I looked past her out the window at the sunset, the colors of the sky felt beautiful but meaningless in my heart. She raised her head, revealing her lovely face, the face of the girl I had loved since childhood. She quietly apologized, her voice barely a whisper. Suddenly I felt overwhelmed. I couldn't stay there any longer. I stood up and moved toward the door, hearing her call out to me, "No, don't go, Tommy! Please don't go!" The Porsche was still parked in front of the house, and I quickly drove down the driveway to the canyon road, speeding dangerously. I didn't know where I was going, then I remembered the cliff. It was our favorite place in Malibu, the best spot in California. I arrived in less than 15 minutes. I parked the car and walked up the dirt path through the bushes until I reached the edge. I stood on the edge of the continent, maybe 250 feet above, looking out over the Pacific Ocean. Irina and I had joked before, during happy moments, that this would be a perfect place to end it all, with a beautiful view before a fall. We could laugh about it then, when we were both so happy that the idea seemed silly. But now it felt different. I knew I wouldn't jump. I couldn't do that to the twins. For their sake, I realized I would have to get back in the car, drive up the hill, and face the reality of my life. I sat there for a long time, maybe 2 hours, watching the ocean as the sunset faded into night. How did I end up here? How did Irina and I get to this time of such sadness? Nothing ever happens for just one reason. That's something I understand. Many things come together to lead to an important event, whether it's good or bad. For nearly 7 years, Irina and I were happy together in Madison. My work was going well, and later it became truly successful, which I'll share soon. Before that, I was earning enough for us to buy a small house south of the Arboretum, in a nice area. A year after we lost our baby, Irina went back to school to study accounting. It was hard for her socially at first, like it had been in college. But this time she had me to support her. She did really well, finishing in 2 years and graduating with honors in May 2003. She was looking at job offers from 3 good companies in Madison when a big surprise came our way. Irina had joined a small Russian Orthodox church in Madison and made several friends there. Her interest was more cultural than religious before her mother passed away. Russian art and language were part of her life, and she wanted to keep that connection. I went with her sometimes, but mostly she attended church on her own. About a week after graduation, Irina returned from Sunday service with a strange look on her face. She seemed both joyful and serious at the same time. She made us a lovely lunch, then took my hand and led me into the bedroom for a cozy afternoon together. When we finished and were lying back, relaxed in each other's arms, she finally shared what was on her mind. "Tommy, is it okay if we talk about something serious?" "Of course," I replied. It turned out that the 17-year-old daughter of Irina's friends, the Lemontovs from church, was expecting twins. Tatiana was a bright girl who had taken some college courses and got into a complicated situation with her married history teacher. Worried about how her parents would react, she waited until the 4th month to tell them about the pregnancy, and by then, it was too late to think about other options. They're planning for her to give the babies up for adoption, and well, Tommy, do you think we could think about taking them? Irina looked at me, both hopeful and anxious. We had talked briefly about adoption after Walter's passing and agreed it was something we might think about in the future. But now, nearly 3 years later, I realized we had never revisited the topic. How did I feel? I felt excited, my heart racing. I loved Irina and our life, but the idea of having children and a real family felt fantastic. I'm not sure, I said seriously. I've heard many mothers seem to forget about their partners once the kids arrive. You might change things between us. I don't know if I can handle that. She seemed ready to respond with frustration, but then noticed the smile on my face and laughed instead. You cheeky boy. For a moment I thought you were serious about that. Then she paused and looked into my eyes. You would really want this, Tommy? I would love to have children with you, sweetheart, and the thought that they would have some Russian heritage makes it even better. They'll probably be smart too, even if their father wasn't perfect. I think we should do it. How much? But before I could finish, Irina jumped on me, showering me with kisses and happy squeals. We embraced again, sharing our joy without needing to say more. Earl and Lily were born on August 22nd, and they became part of our family that very day. It was difficult for Tatiana to part with the children, but she got to know Irina and me and felt comfortable that we would be loving parents. She also knew she could visit whenever she wanted. For the first year or so, Tatiana came to see them at least once a month. But then she went off to Duke University, and we didn't hear from her much. Irina decided to wait at least a year before taking an accounting job. She was eager to be a full-time mother above all else. Everyone who has had a baby can understand the busy and confusing time we had in our home during the first few months, along with the happiness we felt. Our babies were lovely and clever, and we were captivated by them. As they grew, we were also amazed by the special connection they had, like many twins do. Although we were always tired, we were extremely joyful. In my job as a software designer in Madison, I worked with a man named Rick Torgerson, who had just graduated from Wisconsin. He was a year older than me, and we quickly became a great team. Rick had wonderful ideas, though he was not always practical. My realistic approach helped turn his creative thoughts into workable solutions. Soon, we were well regarded in our department. More than just being colleagues, we enjoyed each other's company. I introduced Rick and his girlfriend Lisa to my friend Irina, after explaining a bit about her appearance. The four of us often got together on weekends for dinner or to watch movies. One Saturday afternoon in June 2004, when the twins were about 10 months old, the women were playing with the babies while Rick and I chatted about work, specifically some search algorithms our company was developing and how they compared to Google's. Then, something clicked between us. It's a flaw, isn't it? Rick said, and I nodded in agreement. Yes, I was thinking the same thing. Their search combination isn't as good as it could be, especially compared to the rest of the system. I think we could improve it. We sat at my dining room table for over an hour, drawing, writing ideas, and having an excited discussion about it. We lost track of time, and Lisa and Irina laughed at us while having dinner with the twins in the kitchen. The next day, Rick and I met again for several hours, and by the end of the afternoon, we felt we had a promising idea. We had a long talk about whether to share it with our supervisor at work or to keep it to ourselves and work on it during nights and weekends. I believe that since the idea started from work we did on company time, we should figure out an agreement with them. After some discussion, Rick agreed. By the end of that week, we met with our project supervisor, Roger Handler, to discuss the idea. We shared the basics and suggested that we would give 20% of any profits from our work, but we would handle the patents and keep control of everything else. It took several more meetings, including 2 with lawyers, but we finally reached an agreement. We decided to let the company have 25% and to have the first option to buy or license the software, instead of selling it to a larger company. Rick and I agreed that we could use half of our work hours on the project, but the rest needed to go to our other tasks. After 8 months, we had our first patent in progress. By 21 months, our improved search algorithm, protected by 4 patents, was put up for auction. It was no surprise when Google bought it. They didn't want another company competing with them. I will always remember the moment I realized a deal like this was coming. It was 3 or 4 months before the sale, but Rick and I understood that our hard work was about to pay off. I came home with flowers, a bottle of sparkling drink, and some strawberries and said, "Let's put the twins to bed. We need to celebrate tonight." We had a quick dinner, spent time with the twins, and got them to bed by 8:30. Then I took Irina to the shower, and we enjoyed our time together, having fun. After that, I brought the sparkling drink and strawberries to the bedroom. I raised my glass and said, "Here's to my amazing wife, Irina, who is about to be very wealthy." We had talked about my work regularly, and Irina knew it was going well, but this time I was sure we were going to make a lot of money. "How wealthy?" she joked. "Wealthy enough that I should stay with you?" "I hope so," I replied. "How does $15 million sound?" She looked surprised and said, "Oh my God, really?" After a moment, she drank her glass of sparkling drink and then grinned. "For $15 million, I'm all in." I laughed and hugged her, sharing our excitement. We took turns whispering, "We're rich," and giggling. When we were lying together in bed with Irina gently touching my chest, she asked, "Is this really happening? $15 million? It could be even more, but yes, it's likely in the next 2 months or so." She nodded thoughtfully. "Well, I haven't seen any money yet, but I think I need to let my $15 million husband know just how much I appreciate him," she suggested. We shared another laugh, embraced, and enjoyed the moment together. When the deal finally closed in March 2006, it was quite complicated. There was an upfront payment of $120 million, plus yearly payments based on the number of searches on Google's site. After paying the share of the company and our lawyers, Rick and I each received an impressive $34 million. Our yearly earnings from the deal were expected to be around $1,012 million each for as long as our algorithm worked well. This could last a year or 5. Regardless, we were incredibly wealthy. In March 2006, at just 28 years old, Irina and I had more money than we had ever imagined. Our lives were about to change in ways we couldn't foresee. A week after the contract was finalized, Rick and I rented a stretch limousine and took our wives out for a celebratory dinner. Rick and Lisa were now married and had a 1-year-old son named Jake. We enjoyed a lovely meal, celebrated our success, and toasted to our friendship. As Irina and I happily went to bed that night, we agreed that having good friends to share this happiness with made everything even better. We had many choices to make, but 2 major decisions stood out. Where would we want to live and raise our children? And did I want to continue working? Thankfully, money was no longer a concern. We had been discussing these topics for weeks since it became clear that we had become very rich. It was surprisingly challenging to figure out what we wanted when we could afford almost anything. Should we buy a yacht and travel the world? Build homes in different countries? Purchase a luxury apartment in New York City? All of that was possible. Ultimately, we chose to move to California. We weren't fond of the weather in Wisconsin, and the idea of living near the ocean excited us. California also offered good opportunities for my career in the software industry. As for my job, I decided to take a year off but planned to return afterward. I enjoyed my work and didn't want to spend my life at home, even though I cherished my family. I wanted Irina to join me in California to look for houses. At first, she hesitated, feeling uneasy about meeting so many new people. However, once we had money, planning became easier. By then, Elaine, our nanny, had been with us for almost a year. She loved caring for the kids, so we felt comfortable leaving them for a few days. I arranged for a private plane to take Irina and me to California and around the state as needed. Most importantly, I found a great real estate agent in Los Angeles named Angela Simon. She agreed to spend a week showing us homes. Once Irina knew she wouldn't have to see large crowds, she decided to join me on the trip, and we had a wonderful experience. Angela introduced us to beautiful houses from San Diego up to the Oregon border. Everything we looked at offered a view of the Pacific Ocean, and the ones we liked best provided both luxury and privacy. In the end, we chose a spacious, modern four-bedroom house on a quiet road in one of the canyons in Malibu, just north of Los Angeles. We weren't far from where a famous television host used to live, not a bad neighborhood. The backyard had a two-bedroom guest house for a nanny, and there was an excellent private school for the twins just 10 minutes away. Since we had plenty of money, we bought the house right away, even though we weren't ready to move in. I then sat down with Irina to talk about another idea, a project I had been thinking about for a long time. Over time, I had become completely comfortable with Irina's unique appearance. I accepted her features, though I was aware of how much she struggled with them and how they affected her daily life. At the end of 2005, as we began to see that we would soon have significant wealth, I started looking into plastic surgeons. I found the name of a top doctor in Madison and scheduled a visit with him, bringing along some photographs of Irina. He believed he could help her, but mentioned that the best specialists were in Europe, where they were doing the most advanced procedures. I followed his leads and discovered 3 excellent surgeons, 2 in London and 1 in Geneva. I reached out to all of them, sending photographs and asking for their advice. The response I liked best came from Dr. Ingrid Mühlhausen in Geneva. I did some research on Dr. Mühlhausen. Everyone seemed to agree that she was one of the best in the world. One day in April 2006, after Irina and I had a few weeks to adjust to our new wealth, I took her for a walk to a quiet spot with a lovely view of Lake Wingra. "Hey, I want to ask you something. I hope it doesn't sound silly." She looked at me with curiosity, and I continued, "If there were a way to improve your appearance—" "Make me look normal, you mean?" She responded quickly, a bit defensive. She stood up and walked away, and I let her go, surprised. I knew this was a tough topic, but I had hoped we could discuss it openly. After about 20 minutes, she came back to the bench where I was sitting, looking serious but calm. "I'm sorry for overreacting, Tom," she said. "It's okay. I understand that you deal with this every day. I never want to make things harder for you," I replied. She smiled and gave me a quick kiss on the cheek. "I know that, and I'm sorry. Why did you bring it up?" I took a breath and said, "I wanted to know if you want to explore some options for help if you could." I paused and looked at her. "Have you been thinking about this, Tom?" I nodded, and she quickly sat down on my lap, wrapped her arms around my neck, and started to cry softly on my shoulder. I held her for a few moments until she calmed down. She then sat up and looked at me. I took a tissue and gently wiped the tears from her cheeks. "You are more than I deserve. You know that?" I smiled and shook my head. "No, Irina, you have that wrong. On my best days, I think I'm just barely good enough for you." We shared a long kiss and held each other close. Then she asked, "All right, tell me, what have you been up to?" I told her about my research, my conversation with the doctor in Madison, and everything I had learned about Ingrid Mühlhausen. "I hope you don't think I was overstepping, Irina. And I hope you know that I love you, just as you are. If the thought of doing something about this troubles you, it'll stop." "No, honey," she replied softly. "I think I might want to consider it. Just give me a little time, okay? I've been so used to thinking I will always look this way. I just need to get used to the idea that I might not have to." We stood up and wandered for a while, holding hands and enjoying the silence. 10 days later, we flew to Geneva for a meeting with Ingrid Mühlhausen. We liked her a lot. She examined Irina thoroughly, taking many photographs and measurements, which took several hours. The next day, we met in her office to discuss everything. "I can help you a lot," she said. "There is one scar across your cheek that might always be visible up close. However, I can restore your eye to its normal look and work on your nose. The other scar shouldn't be an issue." That's the good news. The challenging part is that this will be a long process. You will need at least 3, possibly 4 operations, along with some grafting from your thigh. There will be discomfort, but we can manage that with medication. It will take at least 7 months. It would be faster if you could move to Geneva, but if that's not an option, you could travel back and forth. In that case, it might take about a year. Lastly, I would want you to provide any pictures of Irina before her accident. These will help me with the reconstruction. Do you have any questions? We stayed in Geneva for 2 more days, continuing to meet with Dr. Mühlhausen and discussing our options. In the end, we decided to move to Geneva. The children were still in nursery school, and there was a great international school nearby. Our nanny Elaine was single and excited about the chance to spend several months in Europe. She had even talked about moving to California during our trip. So in August 2006, the Lawrence family and Elaine moved into a big apartment in a lovely part of Geneva, right by the lake. It was the start of Irina's treatment. The procedures went well, but watching Irina in pain was hard for both of us. She was very brave, only asking for more medicine when she needed it. There were times when the children couldn't be around to avoid any risks, and she missed them a lot. At the beginning, seeing her after the treatment was sometimes shocking. But by early March 2007, when Dr. Mulhausen said everything was okay for us to go back to the US, Irina had undergone a wonderful change. Irina didn't just look normal, she had become very beautiful. She already had a lovely figure, and now her face was stunning. She was still Irina, the pretty girl I had known in Indiana, but now she looked amazing. I was so happy for my wife, but Irina couldn't believe it. She would often stand in front of the mirror, amazed at how different she looked. When we walked around Geneva, she was surprised by the compliments she received. Used to hiding her face, she was taken aback by all the smiles and kind words from people, including friendly greetings from well-dressed women. We returned to our apartment, and she was almost in shock from the attention. "I can't believe it, Tom," she kept saying. "After all these years, I wanted us to stay in Geneva for another 2 weeks and go out every day, so Irina could get used to how people reacted to her beauty." We talked a lot about how she would face our friends back in Wisconsin. The first people we met in Wisconsin were Rick and Lisa Torgerson. When they walked into our home and saw Irina, their mouths dropped open. There was a moment of silence, and then Lisa ran to hug Irina. "Oh my God, you're so beautiful," she exclaimed, and Rick quickly agreed. My eyes filled with tears seeing their genuine happiness for Irina and her joy at their reaction. It was a special moment for all of us. In June 2007, we said goodbye to our friends in Madison and moved to our new home in Malibu. Rick and Lisa, who were also able to choose where they lived, decided to stay in Madison. They had both grown up in Wisconsin and loved being near their families. Rick was busy with his new software startup and enjoyed working with his energetic team. We promised to visit each other often, even with the distance. When we arrived at the house in Malibu, our realtor Angela Simon met us there. She was struck by Irina's warm personality and kept saying how excited she was to introduce us to others in the area. That was exactly what he had hoped for. Angela was well connected with the social circles in Los Angeles, and I thought she'd be a perfect friend for us as we settled in. Thanks to our work, I wasn't entirely unknown. After selling our software to Google, Rick and I had gained some recognition in the tech world. We had even been featured in a Newsweek article, appeared on the covers of several tech magazines, and were briefly profiled in the Wall Street Journal in an article that painted us as up-and-comers in the industry. Irina, however, had stayed out of the spotlight back then, as this attention had come before her recovery from surgeries. Now she was eager to go out and meet people, especially some of the high society folks Angela knew, though she felt a bit nervous. "How will I talk to these people?" she asked me, laughing a little. "I don't know anything about movies, fashion, or even computer software." I hugged her close, reassuring her. "You're one of the kindest, most genuine people I know, and besides, you're absolutely stunning. You'll have them charmed in no time, especially the men." She laughed, pleased, but I added playfully, "Just promise me you won't let any famous types whisk you away, all right?" Unexpectedly, she grew serious and looked straight at me. "Tom, never," she said, her voice steady. "You and the kids are my world, my everything. I would never put that at risk." She took my hand, gazing into my eyes. "You believe me, don't you?" "Of course I do," I answered, smiling. "And you know," I added, glancing at the clock, "we've got about an hour until Elaine brings the twins back. Think you have a little time to remind me how much we mean to each other?" She smiled back, her eyes warm. We shared a quiet, tender moment on the couch, appreciating each other's presence in the new home, feeling grateful for the life we had built together. As we held each other close, all our worries faded, and we found ourselves simply enjoying each other's company, looking forward to the future with a sense of peace. Her excitement made me feel happy, and soon I found myself overwhelmed. We relaxed together, breathing a bit faster, and I said, "I'm sorry that was so quick." She kissed me fiercely and looked at me with bright eyes. "Don't apologize, Tom. It's amazing to me that you still want me so much after all these years." She hugged me tightly and rested her head on my chest. "I love you so much," she whispered. We dozed off, waking suddenly when we heard Elaine's car pull up. We jumped up and smiled at each other, quickly getting dressed. It was our third week in California when Angela hosted a pool party to introduce us. I can't tell you how much of an impression Irina made. The crowd was a mix of people, actors, some business folks Angela had helped with real estate, and a few from the news industry. We recognized many familiar faces from movies or TV: Benjamin Bratt, Anne Hathaway, Larry David, and others. Irina was both excited and nervous. She stayed close to me, holding my arm tightly as we moved around with our drinks. "I can't believe we're here with these people," she whispered several times. Angela approached us, and Irina almost stumbled when she saw the couple behind her. "Irina, Tom, welcome. I'm thrilled you could come. Let me introduce two dear friends of mine. Catherine Michael, this is Tom and Irina Lawrence. Tom is that software genius you've probably read about. They just moved into a lovely house in the canyon." Irina gripped my arm tightly. We were face to face with Michael Douglas and Catherine Zeta-Jones, shaking their hands and hearing them say how nice it was to meet us. We chatted happily for a few minutes. Catherine was even more beautiful in person than on screen. I managed to ask about our new home and how we liked LA so far. I couldn't help but notice how taken Michael seemed with Irina's beauty. He and Irina exchanged friendly conversation, but I could see he was genuinely interested. Even with everything he had, it was clear he was drawn to her. After a little while, they went to get a drink, and Irina said, "Oh my God, Tom, I can hardly believe that just happened. Did that really happen?" As we walked around, I said, "Did you see the way he looked at you?" "Oh, don't be silly, he was just being friendly." "I'm telling you, Irina, he thought you were stunning. He looked at you like you were the only one here." She blushed a bit and called me silly. But as we mingled, the same thing happened again and again. We met the news anchor from KNBC in LA, a producer from Searchlight Pictures, a woman I recognized from a movie with Robert Redford, and a few important people from the California banking industry, including one I had just read about in Fortune. All of them, especially the men, looked at Irina with great interest. They asked her several times if she was a model or an actress, and when she shyly said no, they suggested that she should try it since she certainly had the looks for it. This made her blush even more. One rather heavy-set man in his 50s claimed to be the top modeling manager on the West Coast. He insisted on giving his business card to Irina. "I'm telling you," he said with a rough voice, "I could help you make a lot of money. You could be famous in just 3 months." He looked deeply into her eyes as if trying to convince her, then nodded at me and walked away. On the way home from the party, after we thanked Angela and said goodbye to some new friends, Irina seemed dazed. She wasn't used to that kind of attention, especially from people she never thought she would meet. As I parked the car in our driveway, she put her hand on my arm and said seriously, "Tom, tell me the truth. Am I really that beautiful?" I smiled at her. "Yes, you are that beautiful. There wasn't a woman at the party more lovely than you, as you could see from all the attention." As I walked toward our door, I turned back to see Irina just standing by the car, staring thoughtfully at the ocean. "I don't know if I'm ready for this, you know. I spent so many years thinking of myself as unappealing, hiding my face from everyone but you. And now I'm supposed to see myself as beautiful?" She started to cry a little. "How do I handle that?" We went inside and talked for a long time about her beauty, about LA, and about what we wanted from our lives now that we had money and freedom. We agreed to take things slow, no need to rush into the social scene or pretend to be anything other than who we are. "Honey, we're just two Midwestern kids who got really lucky. We're not in the movies or living the glamorous life. Let's just be ourselves, and eventually we'll find friends here who appreciate us for who we are." Irina nodded, resting her head on my shoulder. We sat for a bit longer, enjoying the peace, until she said, "Let's go check on the twins. Our first few months in LA were full of changes. We needed to learn about the city, where to shop, where to eat, and more. Lily and Earl started attending a new nursery school, and Elaine, Irina, or I would take them there, depending on the day. Our big house required a full-time maid, so we had to adjust to having another person around all day. Margarita Jimenez was a friendly, always smiling woman in her middle years. We liked her from the start, but we still had to get used to having less privacy. At first, it made it hard for us to relax as a couple. After a month or so, we grew more comfortable sneaking into our bedroom for a nap every now and then. Irina was happy to stay home for now. With our new financial situation, she didn't need to work, and she chose to wait until the twins started elementary school before deciding what she wanted to do next. I explored the software industry for several months, taking short consulting jobs for different companies in California that wanted my advice on their projects. Irina and the kids got used to me being away once or twice a month, flying to Silicon Valley and coming back in a day or two. On the advice of Angela and Ted Friedman, our financial manager in LA, I bought a timeshare for a small private jet. I didn't want the trouble of owning a plane, but with the timeshare, there would usually be one available at LAX for me, complete with a pilot and crew. This meant we avoided the hassle of security and long lines at commercial airports. Irina and I also hired Jason Davidson as our full-time driver, in a royal blue Escalade that Irina chose. Jason was a laid-back man in his late 40s, recommended by several celebrities he had worked with over almost 20 years. He was always ready when we needed him, whether to take me to the airport, drive Irina shopping downtown, or take the whole family to Palm Springs for the weekend. Jason seemed to know every street and highway in LA, as well as many celebrities. He entertained us with amusing stories about famous people, and Irina was always impressed that he had met them. In January 2008, after we had been in LA for about 6 months, Rick Torgerson came to visit for a couple of days. While we were sitting on the deck talking after dinner, he had a proposal to share. "Please let me finish before you say no. Okay, Tom? TSS is not going as well as I hoped, and I think I know why." Torgerson Software Systems was Rick's startup, which he had started in Madison after we both left our jobs. The people I've hired are smart and eager, but I can't really connect with them. They all seem scared of me, and none of them have the practical problem-solving skills I always relied on you for. Raising the money we needed was tougher than I thought it would be. So, besides enjoying time with you, Irina, and the twins, I'm here for another reason. I want you to join the business and be my partner. He noticed my surprised expression and added, "Wait, I'm not talking about moving back to Wisconsin. I'm thinking of mostly working together from a distance. We both know we can accomplish a lot with email and video calls. I think a couple of trips each month would be enough, just for a few days each time, and I could come out to see you too." At first, I was hesitant, but as we discussed it more, it began to sound like a good idea. Working with Rick had always been fulfilling. Our skills complemented each other perfectly, and we had successfully finished many projects, not just the big one we sold to Google. Rick stayed for another day and a half, discussing everything with me and Irina, who I insisted on including in the conversation. By the time he left, we had generally agreed on a new company, TLI, Torgerson Lawrence, Incorporated. This company would take over Rick's existing one. It would be based in Madison, and we would be equal partners, with him managing things from the office and me handling things from outside. I would also work on raising investment money in California, and we both felt confident that our names would help with that. We decided I wouldn't need to go to Madison more than 3 days a month, and we'd make exceptions for emergencies or important deadlines. Most of our work would be done remotely or when Rick visited California. We let the lawyers handle the details, and within 6 weeks I was back to work, which made me very happy. I had started to feel a bit bored in Malibu, even with the consulting, so working with Rick again was exciting. I turned the lower level of our house into an office, so my daily walk to work was just 16 steps down the stairs. Plus, I could come upstairs for lunch with Irina and the kids, or even to relax with my wife whenever we wanted. Our social life continued to surprise us. Irina and I made quite the entrance at Angela's party, leading to several more invitations over the next couple of months. We must have attended nearly 20 parties and met many of the most stylish and wealthy people in LA. Irina had asked Angela for help in finding nice dresses for all these events, and she quickly became comfortable shopping at the fancy stores in Beverly Hills. It helped that we had a lot of money, but even more that she looked beautiful in everything she wore. Her looks were stunning. We formed many new friendships and connections. Among our closest friends, none were famous celebrities, just people we liked and felt comfortable with. One couple had a son who became friends with Earl and Lily at preschool. Another family had recently moved from Indiana to LA and found a house with Angela's help. Talking to them about life in the Midwest was a nice way to relax and escape the busy LA lifestyle. But we also made friends with some of the biggest stars in LA, people whose faces we often saw on magazine covers like Glamour and GQ. They were TV actors, screenwriters, and some were even well-known movie stars. Jamie Brayland and Barbie Raines were two of the hottest movie stars in recent years. Jamie was often compared to Brad Pitt or Tom Cruise, and he had even starred in the last two Mission Impossible movies. He was recognized as one of the most attractive men alive. Barbie was also very popular, known for her roles in romantic comedies similar to Meg Ryan's films. They had appeared on the cover of People magazine several times, and it seemed like the media hoped to turn them into the next famous couple. Jamie was tall and fit with wavy brown hair and a playful smile that seemed to charm many. Barbie had black hair, dark eyes, high cheekbones, and an elegant appearance. We met Jamie and Barbie at a party in November at the Douglas Zeta-Jones house. We were surprised when Barbie called us a couple of weeks later to invite us to a small dinner party. From that moment, our connection grew into a true friendship. Irina and I got past our initial excitement and started enjoying their company. It helped that Barbie grew up on a farm in southern Ohio, where her real name was Jane Ann Stasky, and Jamie was raised on a ranch in Texas. They were not originally from LA and often expressed their skepticism about the constant media attention they received. We went out to dinner, sailed on their big sailboat, which Jamie named Sweet Barbie, and took helicopter trips to Catalina Island for picnics with the kids. Since Barbie and Jamie didn't have children of their own, they really seemed to enjoy being around Lily and Earl, at least for a little while. Irina asked me several times why I thought they liked us. They could be friends with anyone: Julia Roberts, Arnold Schwarzenegger, even the president. Why would they want to be friends with us? I'm not sure, but I think they appreciate that we treat them like normal people. We probably come across as grounded, not wrapped up in the Hollywood lifestyle. And I bet they don't get much attention like that, always surrounded by movie stars and the media. And then there's your looks. Irina stared at me without speaking. Oh, come on, Irina. Haven't you noticed how Jamie looks at you? Tom is married to Barbie. Why would he look at me that way? I laughed. You're joking, right? Here are 3 reasons. First, you are incredibly beautiful. Yes, Barbie is a famous star, but she can't compete with you. The way you looked in that bikini on their boat had everyone, even the Pope, taking notice. Jamie couldn't take his eyes off you for hours. Second, Jamie is a man. It doesn't matter that he has a lovely wife. Most men will always notice other women, especially ones like you who are fun to be around. And third, you know he likes to flirt, right? She looked surprised. Really? Who told you that? Angela mentioned it, and then a few others confirmed it. They all said he gets involved with other women behind Barbie's back, nothing serious, but he has strayed more than a few times. That's terrible. Does she know? I shrugged. I honestly don't know. It's hard to believe she's completely unaware, but maybe they have an agreement, or maybe he's just really good at hiding things. I pulled her close. In any case, this isn't our issue. They're our friends, but we haven't seen anything directly. And who knows? Maybe they're just rumors. But I will say, Irina, the way Jamie looks at you and flirts with you, there's something there. She laughed at me, but I could tell she was considering what I said. Then she kissed me and said, well, it's a good thing I'm not swayed by him. Even if he is very charming, and even if there's not a woman who wouldn't be interested in him. She noticed my expression, probably a mix of shocked and amused, and she laughed joyfully. You have nothing to worry about, Tom. She kissed my nose. He's too charming for me. I prefer my men simple and ordinary, just like you, honey. I playfully teased her. I'll show you ordinary. I picked her up and tossed her over my shoulder. Irina squealed in surprise, and I carried her down the hall and into our bedroom, closing the door behind us. She playfully hit my shoulders, not very hard, laughing and saying, Stop it, you silly man. Jamie and Barbie didn't become our closest friends, but they liked being with us, and we spent quite a bit of time together. We attended their fancy New Year's Eve party, one of the most popular events in Hollywood. It was a gathering for about 150 people at their beautiful modern house with a view of the ocean, and nearly everyone there was someone famous or known from movies, except for us. When Irina and I arrived, dressed up and feeling a bit anxious, Barbie greeted us at the door with a warm smile and gave each of us a kiss. As she guided us through the house, she whispered, "Are you both planning to stay over tonight after the party? Jamie and I would love to have some time to chat with you." Surprised and pleased, we agreed. We usually had Elaine stay in the spare room next to the twins whenever we were out late, so it was fine for us to spend the night. I stepped outside for a moment and told Jason he could take the rest of the night off, and he smiled back at me in appreciation. The party was wonderful. For Irina and me, it felt like we were in a magazine, watching everyone with wide eyes, enjoying the champagne and delicious food, and chatting occasionally with a few familiar faces. As the party started to wind down around 2 a.m. and the last guests were leaving, Jamie looked at us with a grin and said, "Finally." He led us to the cozy patio that overlooked the swimming pool, with the dark ocean sparkling under the stars. What a sight. He stepped away briefly and returned with 4 champagne glasses filled to the top, a final toast for the night. "To good friends," he said, and we all sipped our drinks, thanking them for a fantastic evening. Barbie pretended to roll her eyes. "It's work," she said, and when Irina looked puzzled, she continued, "This is something Jamie and I have to do from time to time, entertain people in the industry, put on a show, let everyone enjoy each other's company. But it's not what we do for fun." Jamie chimed in, "We'd much rather be alone or with a few close friends like you two." We were touched by their words and assured them that we felt the same. We talked casually about the party and the guests, and after a little while I started to feel very relaxed. "I think I might have had a bit too much champagne," I said, and Jamie glanced at Barbie with a smile. "Or something," he replied. We continued chatting, and I noticed Barbie moving closer to Jamie on the couch, resting her head on his shoulder. Before long, they seemed lost in their moment together, laughing quietly. I looked at Irina, expecting her to feel awkward, but to my surprise, she was watching them intently, a thoughtful look on her face. Jamie noticed my puzzled expression and smiled. "Just a little something extra to enjoy the night," he said. "What does it do?" I asked. I knew I should have been worried or concerned, but I felt calm and relaxed, enjoying the light breeze on my face and the soft sofa beneath me. "Irina," Barbie said softly, "why don't you go sit with Tom?" Irina floated over and comfortably settled on my lap. She looked at me with sleepy eyes and leaned in for a kiss. I was surprised but quickly realized she was feeling very good. We continued to kiss while we watched Barbie and Jamie, who were sitting together closely. I noticed Barbie had her hand on Jamie, and he was gently touching her back and shoulders. Usually Irina would have felt embarrassed, and I might have gotten up to leave, but today was different. We were both relaxed and lost in the moment as we kissed for a while. Before long, Irina started to remove her blouse, and I saw Jamie hold her close. As things in the room heated up, I felt a tug of discomfort. I stood up, holding Irina's hand gently, and said, "I think it's time for us to head to the guest bedroom." Jamie looked a bit disappointed but responded, "Sure, man, feel free to stay a little longer." I shook my head and led Irina away. She glanced back, captivated by Barbie and Jamie, who were still close together. Once we were behind the closed door of the guest bedroom, Irina pulled me in close. She was excited, but it felt like everything was happening in slow motion, a mix of the ecstasy and the champagne we had enjoyed. We shared soft kisses and cuddled on the bed. It was a unique experience, intense but comfortable at the same time. I felt happy just to be close to her, enjoying the moment and everything around us. We took our time, feeling relaxed and connected without rushing. Eventually we fell asleep, still holding each other, not even sure if we had reached the end together. When we woke up around 11 the next morning, the house was quiet. Irina and I got dressed and decided to leave without bothering Barbie and Jamie. She wrote a thank you note as I called Jason to pick us up. That afternoon we were both quiet and thoughtful. I guessed Irina was thinking about the adventure from the night before, just like I was. We finally talked about it later when the kids were in bed. I guess it was, I don't know, fun, kind of exciting. Irina said, sounding unsure. You don't seem to really believe that, I replied. Well, being close to you felt great, she said, smiling at me. It was so nice and relaxing. I never knew ecstasy could make me feel that way. But then she added, but I'm not so sure about what Jamie did. You mean the ecstasy in our drinks? Yes, that without asking us or telling us. And then what he and Barbie started doing right in front of us. I wondered if they had plans for something more romantic, but I kept quiet. Irina seemed to be thinking the same thing. Do you think they were going to ask us to join them? She asked. It crossed my mind, I said. How would you have felt about that? If it hadn't been for the drug, that idea would have made me want to leave immediately. But I felt so relaxed. I truly don't know, Tom. If you hadn't taken me to the bedroom. We discussed it for a long time. In the end, we agreed that we weren't mad at Jamie and Barbie exactly, but we knew that being part of something like that wasn't what we wanted. A few months later, we had another adventure with Jamie and Barbie on a yacht in the Aegean Sea. As you can imagine, it's hard for them to find privacy while on vacation without careful planning. They wanted to spend 2 weeks cruising the Aegean, and Jamie's assistant found the right boat. To keep their plans a secret, they asked us to rent it in our names. They made detailed plans to reach the boat, and then they would have it for 2 weeks while we flew in for the second week. I was busy with my startup with Rick and couldn't afford more than a week away. In the end, Jamie and Barbie's public relations team leaked the story that they were hiking in the Himalayas. They actually flew to New Delhi, then took a chartered plane that was supposed to go to Nepal. After taking off, the pilot received new instructions to fly to Istanbul. They then separated, dressed differently, and traveled on their own to a small town on the east coast of Greece, where the boat picked them up. What a lot of trouble. Irina and I were happy we didn't have to deal with all that just to go on a trip. But it worked. Nobody knew where Jambi really was. When it was time for us to meet them, Irina and I left Athens in a hired speedboat. The driver thought he was taking us to Santorini. Instead, we met at a planned spot and took a small boat to the yacht. When we arrived on a bright, sunny April afternoon, Jamie and Barbie were nowhere to be found. The crew member guided us to our cabin, showed us everything inside. It was really nice, and told us lunch would be ready on deck in 20 minutes. Can you believe this, Tom? Irina twirled around the cabin, amazed by the beautiful wood, the big bed, the mirrors, and the decorations. It felt like a fancy hotel. The bathroom even had a big tub. We quickly unpacked, put on our swimsuits, and went up on deck. Irina was ahead of me on the stairs, and when I finally came up, I heard her gasp, "Jamie, oh my!" I stepped out to see Jamie Braylon standing there looking very relaxed, holding a glass of juice for Irina. "Hello," he said, completely at ease. "So glad you've arrived. Here, have a drink." Irina stared at him, and I found myself doing the same. He had a deep tan. It was clear he had been enjoying the sun for a while, and his body was fit, strong and toned, with defined muscles. Irina turned to me, her face red. "Tom, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." "It's okay," I replied. To Jamie, I added, "We just weren't expecting this." "Are you sure, Tom? It feels so nice and free out here." We looked toward the front of the yacht to see Barbie coming towards us, looking just as relaxed and stunning. Irina and I both stared at her for a moment, and then Irina buried her face in my shoulder. I said again, "Jamie, Barbie, this is a little too much for us right now, sorry. We'll head back downstairs." They exchanged glances, and Barbie quickly replied, "No, don't go, Tom, sorry. We'll put on our swimsuits, just give us a moment." She grabbed Jamie's trunks and tossed them to him, then put on her own bikini. "There, all dressed," she said when they were both covered up. "How about this?" Their suits were small, but at least they were decent. Irina and I smiled weakly and joined them at the table in the back, shaded by a canopy, where a lovely lunch buffet was set. "We're really sorry," Jamie said with a grin, not looking sorry at all. "We hardly ever have this much privacy, and it's so nice not to wear clothes. Didn't mean to surprise you." We assured them it was fine, no problem at all, and to forget about it, though, I could tell Irina was still unsettled. Later in the cabin, she said, "I was so, surprised, Tom. I mean, there he is, the world's most attractive man, and I'm standing just a few feet from him, and he's completely bare." And he's got quite a nice physique too, don't you think? Irina blushed and looked at me shyly. Yes, I guess he does, and Barbie, wow, like a goddess from a painting. Yes, they are quite a pair. Jamie and Barbie, I mean, not Barbies. Irina turned, saw the smile on my face, and playfully tossed a towel at me. Oh, you are impossible, Tom Lawrence. We spent the afternoon resting, tired from a day and a half of travel. Later, we joined Jamie and Barbie on deck at sunset for dinner. We enjoyed fish caught by the crew from the Aegean, along with fresh local produce, and had several glasses of sparkling wine. Actually, we started with ouzo, but Irina and I had to admit it tasted a bit strange to us. The evening was relaxing and delightful. We talked, laughed, enjoyed our drinks until we felt a little lightheaded and watched as the sky turned a deep shade of blue and countless stars appeared. It was magical. Barbie said, "Listen, we're both sorry about before. It wasn't right to surprise you that we wouldn't be dressed." We both insisted it was no big deal, and she continued, "Are you sure you don't want to try it? There's no one for miles around except the crew, and they are used to this. We're all friends, and it just feels great to let the sun and the breeze touch your skin." I quietly let Irina respond. She seemed thoughtful. "Actually, Barbie, I kind of expected that you and I might go without tops. We're in Europe after all, and I know a lot of women do that at the beach here." From the corner of my eye, I noticed Jamie smiling widely. "But I don't know. I don't feel comfortable without something on." "That's fine, Irina, really." Barbie smiled kindly. "Bikini bottoms it is, and I'll make sure Mr. Charming over there," she pointed to Jamie, "keeps something on too. Though knowing him, it might be a very small one." "Just one thing, though," Jamie added. "We still plan to swim without suits, Barbie and I mean. It just feels too good to do it that way. I hope you'll feel okay joining us, but you can do whatever you're comfortable with. But I promise we'll put our suits back on when we're on board, okay?" Irina and I looked at each other, and after some hesitation, agreed. So we managed to avoid a week of complete nudity on a yacht with the world's most attractive couple. But not by much. Barbie's bikini bottoms were quite small, and Jamie did spend the week in a very minimal swimsuit that left little to the imagination. Irina's bikini bottoms were more modest, but they still revealed a good portion of her beautiful figure for both me and Jamie to notice. I was the most modest one in our group, choosing to wear regular swim trunks rather than anything too revealing. Barbie had fun teasing me about my oversized swimwear. For most of the week, our casual attire felt natural and relaxed, fitting the easygoing atmosphere. The sun and breeze felt amazing, especially during the early mornings or late afternoons when the heat wasn't as intense. Irina and I felt completely free and relaxed, spending our time enjoying meals, talking, reading, and resting in the afternoons, which often included quiet moments together on the rocking boat, feeling a sense of peace and joy. We all enjoyed swimming, with Irina and I discreetly slipping off our swimwear right before diving in. It was refreshing, and being in the cool water felt incredibly freeing. Jamie and Barbie were mindful of keeping things respectful and didn't cross any boundaries. Still, Jamie had a playful side, often joking around and teasing. With the strong sun, suntan lotion was a must, and Jamie always managed to set it up so that I was applying lotion on Barbie while he attended to Irina. Putting sunscreen on Barbie's shoulders and back was no trouble, and she sometimes sighed contentedly, saying how nice it felt. I kept it respectful, making sure I stayed within appropriate boundaries. When she needed sunscreen on her front, I handed her the bottle, and she handled it herself, laughing and calling me no fun as she applied it. When it was her turn to put lotion on me, Barbie enjoyed a little teasing herself, though always playfully. Jamie, however, was more expressive in his compliments toward Irina, often telling her how lovely she looked as he carefully applied lotion to her back and shoulders. All this lightheartedness brought Irina and me closer. Some days after lunch, she'd give me a meaningful look and suggest we take a nap together. Barbie would chuckle, and Jamie would grin knowingly, making Irina blush a bit, but she didn't mind. Back in our cabin, we enjoyed our time together, feeling thankful for the laughter and closeness we shared on this trip. These quiet, joyful moments on the boat, away from daily routines, left us all with happy memories. As we lay together, Irina shared how Jamie had been playful with her and what he whispered in her ear. I try to stop him from going too far, but I can't help but feel excited, she said. I comforted her by saying that Barbie had a similar effect on me. It's fine with me, as long as it's just me you're with. I don't mind if you think about Jamie. I was mostly joking, trying to be lighthearted, but she turned to me, looking serious. Really, Tom? You don't mind if I don't know, imagining things? Not at all, I replied earnestly. He's a famous movie star, and he's right there, close to you. How could that not catch your attention? She seemed a bit more at ease. Okay, I guess, but please don't leave me alone with him, not even for a minute. I wanted to tease her more and ask if it was Jamie she worried about or herself, but I kept those thoughts to myself to avoid upsetting her. On our third day, Jamie almost succeeded in getting Irina alone. It seemed like he was trying. He and I had been helping each other with sunscreen for our wives, and now they were applying it on us. We both looked a little obvious in our swimwear, but we pretended not to notice. Jamie sat up and said, Barbie, do you remember where we left that magazine? Then he looked at me. You guys have to see this. There's a funny article about us mountain climbing and supposedly arguing at a high altitude. It's in the stateroom, honey. Why don't Tom and I go find it? Before I could say anything, Barbie grabbed my hand and pulled me toward the stairs. I caught a glimpse of Irina's concerned expression as we passed by her. Thinking quickly, once we reached the bottom of the stairs, I said, Wait, Barbie, I need to leave my sunglasses up on deck. I won't be able to see well down here. Before she could respond, I turned back to the deck. When I got outside, I saw Irina sitting up with Jamie beside her. He seemed to be moving his hands over her shoulders, but he stopped when he noticed me. That was quick, he said, sounding a bit annoyed. I just wanted to leave my sunglasses here, I replied. I moved slowly to the table, pretending to be unsure of where to put them. Is the article in German? I'm not sure I can read it, I said to keep the conversation going, hoping to delay being sent back below again. I chatted for a moment longer, and to my relief, Barbie came outside, holding the magazine. Ira read the article to us, easily translating it from German, and we all laughed together. The rest of the week, Jamie and Barbie didn't try to pull us apart. Most of the time, we enjoyed a relaxing vacation. One night, though, Irina got up after midnight to go to the bathroom and was gone for more than 10 minutes. I was about to check on her when she returned to the cabin, looking a bit surprised. Tom, she whispered quietly, you won't believe what I saw. What was it? I asked, still waking up. Irina went to lock the cabin door and then jumped onto the bed beside me. I could sense her excitement. As I walked back from the bathroom, I noticed their door was open. It had been closed before, but now it was propped open, and they were... She paused, her voice just above a whisper. You were watching? I asked, piecing together what had happened. I didn't mean to. I just couldn't look away, she said, moving closer to me. They must have done it on purpose, she continued. I didn't plan to glance inside, but... We talked quietly together, and I could see she was feeling a lot of emotions. As we eased into the moment, she kept sharing what she saw, her breath growing quicker. They were really into it, and there was so much energy. I couldn't help but think about it. She expressed her thoughts as we embraced, feeling close and connected. After a while, we settled down, laying together. Irina looked up at me with concern. I hope I didn't upset you. Why would you feel that way? I asked gently. I was just so lost in what I saw, she admitted, looking away. It was unexpected. I smiled at her, brushing back her hair. You don't need to worry. It was just a moment, and I'm glad you came back to me. After a little while, I walked back to the car, and the night had settled in all around us. I drove slowly back to the house, thinking about Irina and our two wonderful kids. I wondered if we could ever be a family again, and how we could move forward from here. When I arrived home, the twins' lights were off, and only our bedroom was lit. As I stepped onto the front steps, the downstairs lights turned on, and Irina opened the door with a rush. Tom, thank goodness! She ran down the steps and wrapped her arms around me tightly. I gently stepped away, loosening her grip. Irina, please don't do that, I whispered, and she immediately started to cry again, looking at me with sadness in her eyes. I walked into the house, leaving her behind on the steps, her shoulders shaking. I went upstairs, gathered a few things from the bedroom, and moved to the guest room downstairs. I locked the door and got ready for bed, feeling empty inside. I didn't expect to sleep, but I wanted to be away from Irina. She knocked softly on the door, calling out to me, but I didn't reply. After some time, she left, and to my surprise, I quickly fell into a deep sleep without dreams. As our second year in California began, Irina and I were both feeling happier. She seemed more at ease with our life, our wealth, our home, and her own beauty. I felt proud to see how she interacted with important people and the wealthy parents of our children's friends. Having Elaine, our excellent nanny, live in our guest house allowed us the freedom to take fun weekend trips to San Francisco, New York, or even Paris. It was amazing to think we could afford a quick getaway to Paris. We didn't go often, though. My work at TLI, the company Rick Torgerson and I were building, took up a lot of my time. I was away in Madison several days a month, and often traveling to meet investors or find talented people in Silicon Valley. The work was going well, and it felt great to be busy again. Rick was a fantastic partner, just like when we started working together. I returned from a 2-day trip on a Sunday afternoon in late October. Our driver, Jason, picked me up at the airport, and he seemed unusually quiet. He asked the usual questions about my trip, but didn't share any of his regular stories. "Is everything okay, Jason? You seem a bit off today." There was a pause. Finally, sounding uneasy, he said, "Tom, I don't want to share too much right now, but Irina is a bit upset. You'll see when we get home." I felt a wave of concern. Upset? Why? Is she unwell? Are the twins okay? No, everyone is fine. It's nothing like that. Look, I really don't want to get involved in any trouble. We'll be at the house in 5 minutes, all right? Despite my attempts, I couldn't get him to say anything more. When I entered the house, I found Elaine watching Lily and Earl, who were happily playing on the swings in the yard. We had a loud, joyful reunion, and it took me more than 15 minutes to break away and find Irina. Elaine gave me a serious look, but I didn't understand what it meant. I hurried to the bedroom and saw my wife lying on the bed in her bathrobe. She turned towards me, her face filled with sorrow, and I noticed she had been crying. "Sweetheart, what's wrong?" I rushed to her side, wanting to comfort her, but she pushed me away. "No! Don't touch me, Tom! You'll never want to be close to me again once I—" She broke down, crying loudly and couldn't finish her thought. I knelt down next to her, holding her hands as she cried. She tried to pull away, but I held on. "Irina, please talk to me. Whatever it is, we can handle it, as long as you and the twins are okay." "But I'm not okay," she interrupted, her voice filled with pain. "You'll never be okay again." She took a shaky breath. "Tom, Jamie. Last night I was with Jamie." After she spoke, I fell back into a chair, shocked. I ran out of the house and drove to a spot overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Hours later, I returned and went to sleep in the guest room. After all of that, Monday came, the day I had to face the reality of what happened. I woke up at 7:30 and took a long, hot shower in the guest bathroom, locking the door behind me. When I came out, Irina was waiting for me in the hallway. She looked worn out, as if she hadn't slept all night. Her hair was messy, her eyes puffy, and her face showed the signs of crying. "Tom?" she said softly, as if unsure if she should speak to me. "Well, talk later," I replied. I didn't even want to look at her. "I know we need to talk, but I'm not ready yet." "But I promise I won't overreact, Irina. I won't hurt anyone or file for divorce or leave. But I need some space right now." Without waiting for her response, I turned away to get dressed. After a quiet breakfast alone, during which I read the newspaper without really focusing on it, I sat in my office and called Jason to come over. It was time to figure out what had really happened. When he arrived, looking concerned, I locked the door and had him sit across from my desk. He probably hadn't seen me looking so serious before. "Jason, Irina told me a bit about it. Please fill me in on what you know." He sighed and glanced down for a moment. "Okay, Tom. Do you remember that big party Jamie and Barbie had the night before last?" "Yes," I replied. I knew all about the celebration for Jamie's new movie, and both Irina and I were fine with her going without me. Jamie and Barbie were our good friends after all. "Well, I took Irina there Saturday night and thought I would bring her back home too. But around 11:30, Ned Compton, their driver, came outside and told me I could leave. He said Barbie had invited Irina to stay over after the party, and she would call the next day when she needed a ride home. That made sense. Irina and I had stayed at friends' places after parties before. So I went home, Jason said. Then Barbie called me a little before noon yesterday and asked me to come pick up Irina. Wait, Irina didn't call you herself? Why not? No idea, he replied. So I went to get her and she looked terrible. Not just tired, she looked sad, like something bad had happened. She was still wearing the same party dress, but her hair was messy, and she hadn't put on any makeup or even washed her face. I asked her if she was okay, and she just shook her head. No, she said, I'm not okay. I don't think he'll ever be okay again. Jason told me she didn't say anything else, just cried a little on the way home. What do you think happened? I asked him, looking closely. He was quiet. Jason, I trust you. Please be honest with me, I can handle it. He gave me a sad smile. If I had to guess, Tom, well, Jamie has a certain reputation with women. He'd say that somehow Jamie got Irina into a situation she didn't expect. I nodded. Yeah, that's what she hinted at. But not that she sent you home, that seems planned, doesn't it? Jason didn't reply, and we sat in silence for a couple of minutes. Okay, Jason, thanks, I said, getting up. As he opened the door, he said, Listen, Tom, I'm really sorry. I am too, I said, watching him leave. I sat in my office and made a few calls, rescheduling a trip to Northern California that I hadn't planned to take for another 10 days. I wanted to get out of the house. I went upstairs and packed an overnight bag. Then I wrote a short note to Irina and left it on the kitchen table. I'm going to be away for 3 days. We'll talk when I get back, I promise. But I need some time right now. Please take care of the twins and don't worry. Tom. I tried to end the note with, Love, Tom, to comfort her, but I just couldn't write it. I did love her. She was my whole life, but I wasn't ready to put that down on paper. The time away didn't help much, except that I was busy, too busy to think about Irina all the time. I got busy with meetings, interviews, and planning sessions, things that I was good at and could focus on. Sometimes I could push thoughts of her and Jamie away for about 15 minutes, then they would hit me hard. Once I must have shown my feelings during a meeting because the vice president of strategic planning at Optimal Software stopped to ask if I was okay. It took a moment for me to gather myself enough to reply. I had been caught up in a troubling daydream, seeing Jamie with Irina, images that I couldn't shake. Still, the days were mostly bearable. The nights, however, in a nice hotel suite were tough. I brought a few books, but I couldn't concentrate. I ended up watching some not-so-great movies on pay-per-view, and on the second night, I forced myself to drink enough scotch to fall asleep. It wasn't worth it. The next day I felt tired, sad, and had a bad headache. The thoughts occupied my mind a lot. I kept picturing Irina with Jamie, those images playing over and over. How could I compete with someone so charming and fit? Not wanting to talk to Irina or hear her voice, I texted her once a day just to let her know I was okay. On Thursday, I sent a message saying, You'll be home tomorrow night for dinner. Let's talk when the twins are asleep. When I got home on Friday, feeling worn out and down, Lily and Earl were all over me. Thankfully, they were too young to notice the stress that was clear to Elaine, who watched me with concern. During dinner, I let them share their hot dogs with me and tell me about school, showing off their crayon drawings. Since I had been away, they insisted I give them their baths that night. It was a joyful, if messy, time. I loved my kids, and the troubles with Irina made these moments feel even more special. I was unsure how much longer we would all be living together. When I entered the bedroom, Irina was sitting on the love seat, looking unhappy. I chose to ignore her and went to the closet for dry clothes, tossing the wet ones the twins had drenched into the bathroom. After a moment, I returned and sat on the bed across from her. Okay, I'm back. Tom, it's not what you think, she said. There was a pause. I waited for her to continue. Oh no, she cried, bursting into tears. She reached out, arms open. Please hold me, she said, and I let her hug me, though my own embrace felt distant. I felt cold and empty inside, wishing I didn't have to be in this moment. Eventually, I pulled back, feeling the need to get answers. Gently, I led her to sit on the love seat. Sit down, I said. She looked startled and maybe a little nervous. Now, Irina, talk to me. Just tell me what happened." She took a deep breath, looking into my eyes, maybe hoping for some comfort, though I wasn't sure I could give any at that moment. "Tom," she started, "I'll tell you everything I remember. I promise. But you need to know one thing first. I didn't want this, I didn't plan it, and I still don't understand why it happened." Her eyes dropped. "I've always loved knowing that you were the only one, that you'd be my first and only love. And now that's—" Her voice broke, and she started to cry again. "Now that's all ruined." "Stop crying," I said, sharper than I intended. She looked up, wide-eyed, then wiped her face, sitting up as if bracing herself. "Look," I said, my tone softening, "we can cry later. Right now, can you please just tell me what happened at the party?" She nodded slowly, collecting herself. "Okay, you're right. It was a typical party with Jamie and Barbie, all the glitz and glamour, lots of people from Ella's social circle. At first, I felt nervous without you there. But then I saw Barbie, and she introduced me to some people. I even caught up with a few friends we both know, like Tony and Margaret. I began to feel more comfortable and just went with the flow, enjoying myself. Later, Barbie came over and pulled me aside. She told me her driver, Ned, had mentioned that Jason wasn't feeling well and probably needed to head home. So she invited me to stay over after the party ended. I raised an eyebrow. "So Barbie told you Jason needed to leave? That's why you stayed?" Irina nodded, looking puzzled. "Yes, that's what she said Ned told her. Why?" "Never mind, keep going." "Well, after the party ended, it was similar to that time last year when you and I stayed over together. Jamie brought out some champagne. None of us really needed more drinks, but I was already relaxed and feeling a bit lightheaded. We sat around the pool, talking and laughing about everything. I was feeling so at ease, and I even joked about whether he'd spiked the champagne like he teased he might have once before. He just gave me a playful wink. After a while, I felt even more relaxed and wondered if he really had put something extra in the drink, but I was so comfortable by then that I just brushed it off and didn't say anything. Her voice trailed off, her gaze distant. Irina continued her story, looking away, clearly uncomfortable. Just like before, Jamie and Barbie began getting close, and I couldn't help but watch. I listened, staying calm. "And you were affected by it?" She nodded, embarrassed. "Yes, a little. I mean, they looked so carefree, and Barbie seemed totally absorbed, like she wanted me to see everything, almost as if it were a performance." Irina struggled to find the words. "I just sat there, not moving, unable to look away. I remember closing my eyes at some point, trying to block it out, but I could still hear them. I was so relaxed, maybe too relaxed, and I started feeling disconnected from what was happening around me." She hesitated, gathering her thoughts. And then I felt a light touch on my knee. At first I didn't realize it was real, I was just so out of it. But the touch was there, gentle and persistent. I still didn't open my eyes, just lost in the moment. Irina took a deep breath, looking at me with pleading eyes. The next thing I knew, someone was beside me, close, almost guiding me along. I still wasn't fully aware of what was happening and barely even protested. I think I mumbled something like, "Where's Tom?" or something like that. And he just smiled, like everything was fine, and said, "I'm here. Just relax and enjoy." I couldn't hold back. "And you accepted that?" She met my eyes, looking worn. "Tom, please don't you think I've thought about this 1,000 times already? I hate what I did and what he made me do. I would give anything to change it." She was crying, looking fiercely at me, shaking with feelings. We sat there in silence. I couldn't bring myself to look at her or anything around us. Eventually, I encouraged her to continue. I said firmly, "Tell me everything. He was with you, right? Jamie Breland, the charming man, was with you. How could it not be exciting?" She yelled at me to stop and cried more. Then she shared her story. He had touched her gently for a long time until she lost control. Then he joined her. She said it felt like it would never end because of the strong emotions and the state she was in. And yes, it was thrilling. Not just because of Jamie, because I was confused and high and didn't understand what was happening. I didn't even know it was him. Part of me thought it was you. When it was over, she said that he had taken her to a room where she fell asleep, too tired to even cover herself. In the middle of the night, I realized he was with me again. I was still not fully aware, and I just let him be. Irina was no longer crying. She was angry and lost in thought. I was still mixed up and not thinking straight. It was dark. I didn't feel any enjoyment at all. I didn't even have the energy to turn and see who was there, whether it was you or Jamie. I fell asleep again soon after. When she woke up, it was morning light filling the room. Jamie was there, looking at her. He had a grin on his face, saying, "Good morning, Irina, you were incredible last night. Want to continue before breakfast?" He started to move closer to me. Irina took a moment, feeling fuzzy and sleepy before remembering everything. Then she yelled. I screamed at him, "Get out!" He looked shocked and jumped away. I hurried to find my clothes, and then Barbie came in to check on me. I asked her to help me get home, and she quickly gathered my dress and shoes and called Jason. I sat alone in their guest room until he arrived. I didn't want to talk to Jamie or Barbie. I wouldn't eat or drink anything. I just wanted to leave. When I finally got home, I rushed into the shower and stayed there for more than an hour, washing and crying. Irina had calmed down now. All her bravado was gone. She sat on the love seat, her head in her hands and her eyes fixed on the floor. "Now you know everything," she said. "The whole ugly truth. You can do what you want. Tom divorced me. Throw me out, I don't know. I can't believe I did it, but I did. I was unfaithful." Without saying anything more, she got up and left the bedroom, softly closing the door. I spent another night in the guest room, but I couldn't sleep for hours. There were two things I realized that I had to accept. The first was that, if she was telling the truth, Irina was a victim. She hadn't chosen to be with Jamie or taken advantage of our time apart. She had been led astray and misled not just by Jamie, but by Barbie too. And I knew that I had to forgive her. You cannot blame the person you love for being the target of someone else's harsh actions, especially when it was a friend she trusted. But the second thing was that I felt overwhelmed with jealousy and insecurity. I understood logically that this had happened to Irina against her will, but inside I struggled with thoughts about my beautiful wife with him smiling and enjoying herself while he was with her. I could picture that lovely body that had always been mine, now in Jamie's embrace, and I didn't know if I could ever shake those images from my mind. I woke up late, after the twins had gone to school, and I made myself breakfast. Then I called Jason and asked him to come over. We sat in my study and I told him what I needed help with. He agreed and called his friend Ned. "Ned? Hey, what's up? It's Jason, got a minute?" "Yeah, a couple of quick things. I just wanted to know about Saturday night when you said I could leave. Did Irina tell you she was staying over?" "Uh-huh. So it was Barbie's idea? Okay, no reason to ask, just curious." "Anyway, the main thing is, Tom wants to talk to Barbie privately. He's planning a surprise for Irina and wants her advice. What's her schedule like today?" "Yeah, that sounds good. Great. Do you think you could swing by here around 12:15? Awesome, I'll let him know. Thanks, man. Bye." Jason hung up and smiled at me. Ned said that Barbie told him to send me home the other night. He never saw Irina at all. Also, Barbie is going into the studio this afternoon for a meeting. He offered to pick you up on his way to get her so you two can talk in the car. If you want, I can pick you up when you're done. Great, Jason, thanks, I replied. When Barbie got into the car, she was surprised to see me. She looked a little wary. Tom? Oh, hi. Nice to see you. This is unexpected. I gave her a friendly kiss on the cheek, which was our usual greeting. Hello, Barbie. You look lovely as always. I wanted to see if I could talk to you for a few minutes while Ned drives you to the studio. I pressed the button to raise the privacy glass between us and Ned. Once it was up, I turned to her, not giving her much time to prepare. Barbie, I'm not happy about Jamie's actions at your house the other night. I thought you were our friend. How could you let that happen? She looked unhappy and wouldn't meet my gaze. I'm sorry, Tom. If it were up to me, it wouldn't have gone this way. What do you mean by that? I replied, feeling angry. Irina mentioned you were involved. You should tell me what happened. She sighed. What happened is usually what occurs when Jamie is interested in someone new. I'm really sorry, Tom. I care for Irina, and I don't see her that way. But when Jamie is attracted to someone, he tends to go after what he wants. She looked at me. Do you remember a year ago after our big party when we all shared some drinks and he and I started getting close? That was meant to be the start of a fun night for everyone, Jamie with Irina, me with you. But you didn't want to join in. I was surprised, not by the memory, but by how casually she said it. You wanted to be with me? She answered calmly, Not exactly, Tom. I like you a lot, but I'm happy being with Jamie. You being involved would have just been a way for Jamie to get what he wanted. And after that didn't happen like it didn't on our trip last spring, he wanted it even more. I was a bit confused. So you're saying that when Jamie wants to be with a woman, you help by being with her partner? She nodded, looking sad. It does sound bad, doesn't it? I leaned back. So, Barbie, can you tell me what happened that night? Pretty much what happened a year ago, just with the four of us. Jamie put something in the champagne, and this time I think he gave Irina a bigger dose. Then he and I started getting close in front of her, showing her everything. She appeared quite interested, and the person in charge made sure she felt comfortable and didn't leave the room. When Jamie thought she was ready, he asked me to step out, and he went over to Irina on the couch. I imagine he took his time with her first, then they were together for a while. That's what he usually does, she said, sounding bitter at the end. Did she try to stop him? I asked. She couldn't, not with all that ecstasy in her. Jamie wouldn't take no for an answer. I don't mean he would have hurt her, but whatever she said wouldn't have made him stop. She was feeling so relaxed that she couldn't have resisted him. We sat in silence for a moment, considering the betrayal of my so-called friends. And what happened next? The following morning? I'm really sorry, Tom, she replied. Usually women are excited to be with the famous Jamie Breland, the world's sexiest man. They can tell their friends, I was with Jamie Breland. The hard part is getting rid of them afterward. But when Irina woke up and saw Jamie there, she went wild. She started yelling for him to leave her alone. He was shocked, really. The thought that a woman would be upset after being with him was just beyond him. So he went and hid in the bedroom, and I helped her get dressed and called your driver to come pick her up. She was in bad shape, Tom. After she calmed down, she seemed so distant she wouldn't even talk to me. Finally, she looked me in the eye. I really am sorry about this. I held back the angry words that rose up inside me. How did Irina end up spending the night in the first place? That was Jamie's idea, she explained. He wanted another chance with her, thinking he would have better luck with you gone. So he had me send Ned to tell your driver to go home, and then I told Irina that he was feeling unwell and needed to leave, and she could stay over. Why wouldn't she believe me? We're friends, so she didn't think twice about it. Again, Barbie sounded bitter. Why, Barbie? I just don't understand. I can see why Jamie might want to be with every beautiful woman he meets, even though he's married to you. But why would you allow it? Why would you help him with this? How could you have treated Irina like that? We thought you were one of our closest friends. She sighed and looked at me earnestly. Try to understand, Tom. When Jamie and I first got together, I was getting small parts in minor films. Now that I'm married to the biggest star in Hollywood, I'm getting lead roles in major romantic comedies. My last movie earned $160 million, and studios are offering me nearly $10 million a film. I know Jamie is the star, the one with the talent, the major heartthrob. If we broke up, my career would be back to square one within a year. Do you think I enjoy watching my husband go after every other woman he notices? Or that I enjoy getting involved with other men just to help Jamie get what he wants? She shook her head in frustration. So, I said slowly, it's all for your career. I let the words sink in, thick with sarcasm. I honestly don't know which of you is more pathetic or disappointing, whether it's you or Jamie, I added quietly. Not wanting to spend another moment in the car, I lowered the window and asked Ned, the driver, to drop me at the corner. Without looking back, I stepped out of the car. I think I heard Barbie say, I'm sorry, Tom, as the door closed. I walked a block to a Dunkin' Donuts and called Jason, asking if he could come pick me up. Later, I found Irina sitting in the backyard, looking tired and lost as she gazed out at the pool. Will you come for a drive with me? I asked. She looked up, searching my face for a hint of what I was feeling. She seemed worn and uncertain, but she nodded. Of course, Tom. Let me grab my shoes. I drove us to our favorite overlook in Malibu, a quiet spot where we could see the ocean stretch out to the horizon. We walked to the edge and sat together on a rock, and I I gently wrapped my arm around her, drawing her close. I spoke to Barbie today, I said. They set you up, you know. Her eyes flashed with anger. You looked into what happened? She searched my expression, and after a moment, her face softened into sadness. She sighed and nodded. Of course you did. I'm sorry, Tom. I know trusting me must be hard right now. What matters is that they manipulated you, Irina, I said. She looked shocked, and I continued. They made up the story about Jason needing to leave so you'd stay there alone. Then Jamie gave you a huge dose of ecstasy, and he and Barbie put on a show to mess with your head. When they thought you were vulnerable, Barbie slipped away and Jamie made his move. I added, my voice heavy with anger. According to Barbie, they've pulled this scheme many times whenever Jamie wanted to take things too far. Irina was silent, absorbing my words. Finally, she whispered, And Barbie went along with this? Why? It's all about her career, I replied. Being married to Jamie keeps her relevant. She plays along with whatever he wants, helping him get close to whoever he's interested in. I couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. I suppose you should feel flattered he's been trying to get close to you for over a year. He didn't give up easily. Irina stood up and began pacing, her fists clenched, her face tight with anger. I could see she was trying to process everything, and her emotions were clear hurt, anger, and betrayal. She returned and stood in front of me, looking down. Are you really sure about this, Tom? 2 people we thought were our friends set us up like this? Drugging me and all that, was it all because Jamie wanted to be with me? I nodded. They might like us as friends, but part of it was about Jamie wanting to be close to you. Shouldn't we do something about them? She asked. Something that makes them really sorry? I laughed a little, happy to see some of Irina's spirit coming back. That sounds like a plan, but we might run into some problems figuring it out. She walked around, deep in thought. After a moment, she said hesitantly, So where does that leave us? It leaves us needing to heal. You have to move past being hurt by people you trusted. I have to get over feeling like I let you down and wasn't there to protect you. Oh, Tom, she said, wrapping her arms around me. I know we can get through this. She held me tight, with tears in her eyes. But there's more. I also have to deal with what's in my head. You and Jamie, the guy that so many people admire him being close to you. The thought of him with you keeps playing in my mind. But Tom, she said, I was drugged. I didn't even know what I was doing. I almost thought it was you. I understand that, Irina, truly I do, I said softly. But it doesn't mean those thoughts just vanish. And I am scared that I won't be what you need compared to him. Irina stepped back and looked up at me with a serious, intense expression. Tom, listen to me. That idea is just wrong. It doesn't make sense. I never wanted anything to do with Jamie. The confusion I felt was because I was under the influence. The only person I've ever wanted to be close to is you from the moment we met at that party. I smiled at her. Can you honestly say you've never thought about Jamie after that party? After seeing him on the boat or being with someone else? You've never imagined being close to him or how he looked? She didn't look away. Sure, I have at times. Everyone has fantasies, Tom. You've probably thought about others too, right? So what? We all have dreams. They don't mean I wanted to be with Jamie or anyone else, just like I don't think you wanted anyone else. The difference, I said slowly, is that you were with him. I know you didn't mean for it to happen, but it did, and it's going to take me some time to process that. Irina looked at me with sadness and finally nodded. I wrapped my arms around her again, and we stood together quietly, gazing out at the Pacific Ocean. Ralph stood up to greet me with a handshake and looked at me with interest as we took our seats on either side of his desk. So, Tom, what brings you here today? I smiled back at him. Ralph Elliott had been our lawyer since Irina and I arrived in California. At first, he seemed like a serious man, but I learned that he had a funny side hidden beneath his calm exterior. He took his job seriously, but he didn't take himself too seriously, especially not in the wild Hollywood world. First, Ralph, can we just confirm that our conversation is confidential, right? I mean, it's attorney-client privilege. He raised an eyebrow with a grin. Of course, Tom. What are you planning, a big heist? Not that you would need to do that. Seriously, Unless I find out about something illegal from you that I need to report, everything we discuss is completely private. Okay, so let's say, just for discussion's sake, that a friend of mine wants a little help with something tricky. Not illegal, but he wants it done quietly and away from him. Could you, as my lawyer, suggest someone trustworthy who he could talk to over the phone without meeting in person? Ralph smiled wider. Oh, Tom Lawrence, the good guy. What has happened to you? All right, let me think. He paused for a moment, his hands clasped together. I could probably set up for your friend to speak with someone discreet. You could think of him as a connection of a connection, I suppose. We can keep this private on both sides. Of course, there's the issue of trust. Will the person I recommend do what he's supposed to do? And will your friend keep his promises when it comes to payment? For that reason, I suggest a step-by-step plan. Your friend should create a detailed plan with smaller tasks and payments linked to each one. This way, as they complete each step and make payments, both sides can feel more secure about each other. We chatted a bit longer, and Ralph shared a lot of helpful advice about timing, ways to communicate, like using disposable phones at set times, and more. I could tell he was curious but skillfully held back from asking too much. We agreed that he would reach out to the person he had in mind. If that person was interested, Ralph would give me a private contact number for him. As I was getting ready to leave, Ralph said, "Tell your friend to be careful, Tom. I'd hate for this to cause any trouble for you, or should I say him? You're a successful businessman with a strong reputation and a nice family." I felt uneasy about this last comment, but didn't say anything. Just smiled, thanked him, and left the office. 4 days later, I made my first contact with Ralph's associate. He told me to call him Mo and said I would be Larry. Without giving too many details, I shared my general plan with him, and he decided our target would be Curly. It seemed he liked old TV shows. As Ralph suggested, I broke down the project into nearly 24 tasks and made a payment plan for each. After some discussion, we agreed on a total of around $2. $3 million, which included over $1 million for various costs. I wanted this done properly. I bought 2 phones and left one for Mo under a bench in a suburban park, along with $10,000 in cash in an envelope, following his instructions. The money was to show Mo I meant business, and I truly did. As the project moved forward, I made further payments through fake companies that Ralph helped me create on behalf of my friend. These were legal arrangements that kept my involvement mostly hidden. While it was not completely foolproof, Ralph assured me that there were enough layers to protect me from serious investigation. It wasn't until Mo had started preparing several parts of the plan that I revealed Curly's true identity. I could almost hear him smile over the phone. And what did I get for my $2? $3 million after more than 6 months? The headlines in the LA newspapers when everything unfolded were quite telling. Movie star in scandal. Jamie Boyland? Breland in controversy with 18-year-old. Studios moving to cancel Breland contracts. World's sexiest man image at risk. The stories and accompanying photos were just as shocking as the headlines. A photographer had caught Jamie in a compromising situation with an 18-year-old male model named Hank Werner. The pictures showed Jamie in a very questionable scene that raised many eyebrows. The scandal dominated the news for weeks, and for many entertainment channels, it was the only story for days. Was Jamie Breland involved in a same-gender relationship? What about his marriage to Barbie? Was this the end of his career? His lawyers threatened to take legal action to restore his movie contracts, but would they succeed? Would People magazine change his sexiest man status? And so it went. Jamie insisted he had been tricked. He claimed he went to a dark room to meet a beautiful model named Nicole Chesnov, whom he had met at a party in Los Angeles a few weeks earlier. Jamie said that Nicole called him a few times after their first meeting. She told him she would be in Chicago while he was there for Barbie's movie promotion. While Barbie was busy with interviews, Jamie met Nicole for a drink in a private area of the Drake's bar. He said Nicole then invited him up to a room for an intimate encounter, but only in complete darkness, claiming it was more thrilling that way. When Jamie got to the room, he claimed that Nicole whispered for him to come in and close the door. She then took his hand and led him to the bed. In the darkness, he said he could tell it was Nicole because of her perfume. Suddenly, the lights turned on, and to his shock, a photographer appeared. Jamie realized he was not with Nicole, but with a young man he had never seen before. Jamie insisted he had always been straight and never had any same-sex encounters before. He even managed to apologize to Barbie for what he called cheating. What a thoughtful guy. Jamie and his public relations team had hoped to convince people of his unlikely story until the tabloids began digging through their archives. The National Enquirer, along with People, Us, and the TV networks, showed numerous photos of Jamie with Nicole from the Los Angeles party. In many of these photos, Nicole was seen introducing Jamie to a young man named Hank Werner. To make things worse, both Nicole and Hank strongly denied Jamie's claims. Nicole confirmed she had introduced Jamie to Hank and mentioned that he seemed quite taken with him. She admitted meeting Jamie at the Drake bar, but said Jamie had asked her to set up a meeting for him with Hank. Hank supported this story and added that Jamie had been calling and texting him for weeks. Cell phone records eventually confirmed their communication, including inappropriate messages from Jamie to Hank, much to the surprise of Jamie's team. At this point, Jamie's career was in ruins. The studios canceled all his upcoming projects. A hurt and angry Barbie filed for divorce in a very public manner, and he quickly became the subject of jokes everywhere. Even in a world that is more accepting of different sexual orientations than in the past, there was still a big difference between Jamie's tough, masculine image and his true preferences. This difference was too much for his public relations team to handle. Braylon still had his millions, though half of that would soon go to Barbie, but his career had taken a downturn and seemed lost for good. Irina and I followed every twist and turn of this story with great interest. Irina watched with curiosity, while I felt a sense of satisfaction. "You don't seem very surprised by any of this, Tom," she said to me one day, studying me closely. I smiled kindly. "I found that people who do bad things often face consequences eventually. Maybe Jamie's time has come." Her expression turned thoughtful. "But a relationship like that? That doesn't seem like him. Come on, Tom, you know something." Still smiling, I replied, "You can never truly know what someone is feeling even if you think you know them well." "But I do feel bad for him." That made us both laugh heartily. Despite her efforts, she couldn't get anything more out of me. Because I was careful, Jamie's downfall took several months, and it was a tough time for Irina and me. As I had expected, forgiving her for her part in the situation was easier than getting the images of her with Jamie out of my mind. On the night we spoke about what Jamie and Barbie had done to her, I moved back into our bedroom. I wasn't fully ready, but I knew I needed to be there. Sleeping in the guest room would raise questions for the twins, and more importantly, I wanted to reassure Irina. I asked her to be patient with me. I just didn't know how soon I would be ready to be close to her. It was a hard moment. She cried, saying, "But Tom, it wasn't my fault." I understood that. But the big difference between regular me and the charming Jamie Breland, which had never bothered me before, now felt like a barrier I couldn't cross. I worried that I might not be able to really make Irina happy, even doubting if I had ever made her happy, which I knew was silly. I could cuddle with her, hold her close while we watched TV or as we slept, and that seemed to comfort her. But the sad look in her eyes hurt me more as the days passed without me showing any desire to be close. After a couple of weeks, Irina sometimes tried to entice me, walking around the bedroom in her prettiest nightwear, hoping to spark something between us. I often felt a brief rush of excitement, followed by worry and uncertainty, and I never accepted her clear invitations. A few times when we were close in bed, Irina would gently touch my hair or back, and then start to move her hand down my chest. As soon as I realized what she was doing, I always stopped her and said, "Sorry, honey, I'm just not ready yet." She was usually loving and patient, but one time I noticed her expression change and she said, "Tom, it's been over a month. I'm feeling pretty neglected." Without thinking, I replied, "Why don't you call Jamie then?" Her face went pale, and I immediately felt terrible. I'm so sorry. Please, Irina, forgive me. I shouldn't have said that." She didn't cry that time. She looked away quietly, and I could see her chin shake while I pleaded for her forgiveness. One early morning, about 6 weeks later, I woke up to find Irina beside me, smiling gently. I relaxed as she leaned in. But suddenly, my mind was filled with thoughts of Jamie. In an instant, I lost my excitement. and I saw the hurt on Irina's face as she realized I was pulling away. Without a word, she got up and hurried into the bathroom, and I could hear her crying through the closed door. I wanted to leave, but I stayed put. When she finally came out, I took her in my arms and held her tightly. "I'm so sorry," I whispered. "It's not your fault." That night in bed, as we watched a silly show and held hands, I turned to her. "Listen, honey, I know it's been a long time. Can I at least hold you?" I remembered how much she enjoyed my touch, and I hoped to give her some comfort. "Thanks, Tom, but no." Her tone was firm. "That's not what I need. I can take care of myself when I want. I want you back. I want my man back, and until you're ready, it'll wait." She looked away at the TV, and I lay there feeling worse than ever. What finally brought us back together was an unexpected dream. That night I woke up several times because Earl was coughing. Even though I didn't have to get up, I couldn't help but be awake. Each time I fell back to sleep, I drifted into strange dreams. The first few didn't matter much. They were about being chased by vague, threatening figures, hiding behind cars and buildings with no clear end. But the last dream was intricate and vivid, involving a strong connection with someone I once admired. I hadn't thought much about her since we talked, and when I did, it was with dislike. But the dream I had was very vivid. It started with a familiar scene. Irina and I were at Jamie and Barbie's house after a party, watching them in a moment that surprised and excited us. Then everything changed suddenly, as dreams often do. Jamie and Irina were gone. I was on the couch with Barbie. As things heated up, Barbie stood up in front of me and slowly, playfully took off her clothes. First, she removed her blouse, then her pants, and finally, a tiny piece of clothing that was very revealing. I noticed it was damp. Without a word, I pulled her closer, feeling everything around me. In my dream, it felt like ages that I was enjoying her presence. She seemed very happy and excited, and eventually she fell into my arms on the couch. I turned her over so she was lying on her back and moved closer. I playfully teased, enjoying the moment between us. She seemed very animated, making quick movements as she gasped. In the dream, I felt sure of myself, like I was in charge. When I got close to Barbie again, she responded eagerly, wrapping her arms and legs around me. We moved together and she seemed delighted, responding in joy. I felt a rush of excitement building until I couldn't hold back any longer. When it was all over, we collapsed together, completely worn out. A few moments later, Barbie gently shifted away and knelt down, working to express her affection toward me. As I relaxed, I looked across the room and saw Jamie standing in the doorway. He looked uncertain and uneasy as he watched us. When I noticed him looking, he quickly turned away. A cough from Earl startled me awake. It was early, and Irina was sleeping peacefully next to me while I tried to remember the details of the dream. At breakfast, Irina saw I was quiet and deep in thought and asked what was on my mind. "Just a dream," I replied, "but I can't recall much of it. Some running around, people chasing me, and things like that." I decided not to tell Irina there was no need to bring up Jamie and Barbie if I didn't have to. I was set to leave that afternoon for a 3-day trip to Madison to meet with the TLI engineers about our latest project. It turned out that the time away was good for me. Instead of focusing on reports and memos, I used the time on the plane to think about the dream, about Irina and me, and about the pain I still felt from what Jamie did to Irina. I had never thought about the what if. What if it had been me involved with Barbie rather than Irina with Jamie? It didn't matter that I was not as attractive as my wife. How would I have felt about it? The dream provided an answer. I would have enjoyed my time with Barbie, but the next day I would have felt horrible, upset, and guilty. Because I love my wife, and being unfaithful, even in a situation I couldn't control, would have felt like a terrible betrayal. For all these months I worried that what Jamie did to Irina was what she really wanted, that she secretly desired more of that. But now, after my dream with Barbie, I realized it only made me long for my wife. It was exciting, but so what? The fact that someone other than my wife could attract me wasn't surprising. This is true for almost everyone who is married. Add in some excitement and it's hard to resist. The truth was, and I felt ashamed to admit this, that Irina and I had talked about swapping with Jamie and Barbie. We knew they were interested. It was clear enough when we were on the boat in the Aegean. We were tempted. After all, who wouldn't be by two of the most charming movie stars? But we were clear then and now that we wanted only each other. My dream helped me realize that even if I had been in that situation, I would never want to do it again. What I would have felt would be shame and regret. It started to sink in that Irina felt the same, full of shame about what happened, guilty for enjoying her time with Jamie and eager to show me that I was the only one she wanted. I can't believe it took me so long to see that. Jason picked me up when I returned to California, and I got home around 5:30 on Friday. I went straight into the bedroom to drop my bags and freshen up, then found Irina in the kitchen getting ready to start dinner. "I have a question for you," I said as she turned around, smiled widely, and came over for a warm hug. With a serious expression, I asked, "I wonder if you would like to go out to dinner tonight with someone a little foolish." Without smiling, but with a glimmer of amusement in her eyes, she replied, "Is this someone I know? Or is it a stranger?" "Just the same old fool, the one you know well. What do you think? Elaine could take care of the twins." She paused for a moment, thinking. Would this fool be taking me to Cachet, my favorite restaurant in LA, so I could wear the lovely new blue dress he got me for my birthday, the one that goes perfectly with the sapphire necklace? "Yes, that's right," I said, and she replied, "Well then, I suppose that would be okay." She turned away, but not before I saw the joyful smile on her face. It's hard to say what the best part of the evening was. One highlight was seeing how the other diners at Cachet looked at Irina as we were led to our table. Some of the men looked genuinely amazed. She looked stunning in her royal blue gown that elegantly highlighted her shoulders. Or maybe it was Irina's clear curiosity about what I was thinking. She could tell something was on my mind, but I didn't explain it, and she didn't press me, likely sensing that it was more exciting that way. Instead, we talked about friends and the twins, and I shared updates about the latest TLI project and how enjoyable it was to work with Rick. We also tossed around vacation ideas for the summer. I had given Jason the night off, so after dinner, I drove us to our favorite scenic spot in Malibu. We sat close together, her head resting on my shoulder, admiring the stars above the Pacific, enjoying the silence and comfort of being together. When we got home, we quietly checked on the twins and sent Elaine to bed, then walked arm in arm to our bedroom. After closing the door behind us, I took Irina in my arms and kissed her deeply, cherishing the feeling of being so close to her. I whispered softly in her ear, "Do you usually spend time with foolish people?" She laughed lightly, leaning back to look into my eyes. "Not usually, almost never, in fact. But I might be willing to make an exception for you if you really want to." I kissed her again. "Believe me, I really want to." We took our time, helping each other with our clothes, hanging my suit and her dress up carefully in the closet, and putting our shoes and socks away, all while playfully bumping against each other as we moved. I was so eager to be with her that I could hardly breathe, and I felt that Irina felt the same way. When she was completely comfortable, she smiled and said, "I think I might just go brush my teeth," and started to walk toward the bathroom. I lost my patience. I gently took her arm and brought her toward the bed. "Sweetheart, I'm sorry, but I can't wait," I said. We fell onto the bed together, and I was showering her with kisses on her face and neck, holding her close. "Oh, darling, I've missed you," she said, pulling me tight. We were both filled with longing, and in just a minute, we were lost in each other, feeling so happy. It had been nearly 4 months since we had last been together. We moved quickly and passionately, wrapped up in each other. Her arms holding me tight, my face nestled in her neck. I knew I wouldn't be able to last long, but just as I felt that wave coming over me, I could sense her joy, and we shared that moment together, breathless and overwhelmed with happiness. I can't even begin to describe how wonderful it felt. Afterward, there was a peaceful silence. We lay next to each other, a little warm and tired, arms around each other, completely content. It was probably half an hour before she propped herself up on her elbow, smiling sweetly, and started to kiss me, my lips, my eyes, all around my face. This got us going again. We were back to touching and holding each other, finally moving into a slow and loving embrace filled with kisses and smiles. No rush, Just two people happy to be close together. We didn't need to say a word. I thought we might talk that evening, but once we finished, we were both so exhausted. I pulled the blanket over us, and we fell asleep almost immediately. The next morning, we finally talked. After we got up, smiling and feeling good, we dressed Earl and Lily, fed them, and sent them off for a picnic with Elaine. Then we took our coffee out to the patio. We sat next to each other at the table, our elbows and shoulders just touching. I told her about a dream I had. She listened with a smile, and when I finished, she said, "So you finally got to be with Barbie after all. Sounds like it was pretty exciting." I smiled back. It was. Very intense. And when I woke up, I realized I wouldn't want to do that again. And that's when it hit me. I took her hand. "I'm sorry I've been so foolish. I'm sorry I held back from you for so long when what you needed was my love and support. I was caught up thinking about Jamie Brayland, the perfect guy, and how I could never compare to him. Are you over that now?" she asked seriously. "Absolutely," I replied with a smile. "I finally understood that for whatever reason, you prefer regular old me to the world's most charming man." "Yes, I do," she said. "And if you don't know why, you might not be as clever as I thought." She stood up and walked around the patio while I admired her beauty and grace. I reflected on all the years we had shared her changed face, the baby we lost, the happiness brought by Lily and Earl, and her return to being the lovely woman I once knew. "All right then. How are you going to make it up to me?" I knew she was teasing. She had that playful look, arms crossed, pretending to be stern, almost like a teacher who was disappointed with a student. "Well," I said, pretending to think hard, "how about I take you to Cancun for a week, just the two of us?" "And?" she prompted, keeping her serious face. "And we stay at that nice hotel we both like." And we eat dinner every night at one of the best restaurants and then go dancing afterward. And I'll take you shopping for a few new swimsuits and maybe a dress or two. And a smile was starting to break through her serious expression. "And we visit a little island for a picnic, maybe enjoy the sun and the water. And we find time to be together and have fun, as much as we can." "Okay," she said after thinking for a moment. "That sounds pretty good." Hey everyone! Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss any of the exciting stories we have coming up. What do you think about the characters in this story? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.